Hello and welcome to the Fantasy Life Show. I'm your host, Ian Hartitz. It is a great day to be great. It's a great day to break down every single freaking thing that just happened in an ever eventful NFL Week 3. 15 games we're trying to get through this evening. Lock in. Let's get after it. Accordingly, though, I'm joined by the one, the only Dwain, the Rock McFarland. Dwain, no Cowboys W, but I like to think we still probably had some level of fun today.
We had some level of fun. Look, Caleb Williams was fun today. Like, I'm a Cowboys fan, but hey, that's one of the best games I've seen from Caleb Williams in his career. So, we always just try to take the positive, Ian. And that's the beauty of fantasy football. I was raised a Cowboys fan, and honestly, it became an outlet for me because, I can't control what the Cowboys are doing, but I can control my fantasy team. And it might lose like the Cowboys, but hopefully, I can build a team that I can at least look myself in the mirror, Ian, and I can just blame myself.
That's what it's all about at the end of the day, isn't it? So if you guys are joining us again, hope that your week 3 worked out well. But if not, hey, we gotta get those rosters ready for week 4 and beyond. That championship is going to chase itself. And accordingly, Dwayne, let's start things off going all the way back to Thursday night. Bills took down the Dolphins 31-21. Shout out to Miami, though, for covering as 11.5-point dogs. Over it did cash here at 50.5. So kind of late game interception by Tua ultimately undid what was otherwise a pretty good performance, I thought, from the Dolphins, just in terms of them not rolling over. Obviously, the Bills are a superior team. I want to say, it was tied 14-14 at halftime, even though it never seemed that close. Ultimately, though, Josh Allen and company did enough to win. So 3 touchdowns through the air from Josh Allen, another touchdown on the ground from James Cook. He had over 100 yards on the ground, forced 8 missed tackles out there. That was tied for the week high mark. Dalton Kincaid really was the star of the show as a receiver, 66 yards and a touchdown. Khalil Shakir also 45 yards and scored a late touchdown as well. So, Dwayne, again, we know Josh and James Cook are awesome. I think the only disappointing thing is that we continue to see this passing game not exactly centralized around 1 or 2 guys.
Yeah, for sure. I would just say on James Cook really quickly, guys, we are seeing career high utilization numbers here. So, I mean, he's got an 81 utilization score right now on the season. And that's on a scale of 0 to 100. About 20% of that is the actual fantasy points, and the rest of it is based on their role. Last year, he was a 66. So he is way, way up from where he was last year. Last year, he finished with a 48% snap share, 52% rushing attempt share. And if we look at those two numbers this year, he's sitting at 57% of the snaps on the season, 65% of the Bills' rushing attempts. He had 79% of their design rushing attempts in the Thursday night win. And then, yes, man, dude, this receiver room, I don't really know what to tell people, to be honest, because I don't think we know week to week what they're going to do. Week 1, it looked great, 94% route participation for Keon Coleman. Then it dropped to 63%. Then it was 84%. They're rotating Khalil Shakir in and out of the lineup. Josh Palmer's in and out of the lineup. You mentioned Dalton Kincaid. He did come through with the big game, which honestly could have even been bigger. Dalton Kincaid was close to another 2 touchdowns. I think one of them was on the same drive that he scored, though. So technically, 2 would have been the max. But 17.6 fantasy points. The challenge, Ian, though, 63% route participation. That's the same as where he was in week 1 at 60 and week 2 at 59%. But the last 2 games, I will say 32% and 30% targets per route run. He's sitting at 23% on the season for the team. So that's a positive thing, So we'll see if they get him some more work. Right now, he is actually leading the team in targets per route run. So that's a good thing for Dalton Kincaid. But come on, man, let's let him play 75% of the passing plays. That would be a lot better.
I think it actually could have been 3 because he had the one where, of course, he caught it. And then there was that play where it looked like the cornerback might have gotten their arm in there at the last second, or you could have said it was a drop. Either way, it was very close. And then he did, in fact, get tackled at the 1-yard line on a drive that I believe ended with that one Jackson Hall's touchdown. So good stuff from Dalton Kincaid. And hey, guys, guess what? If you are in a pickle at tight end, there's worse part-time players. And have one, obviously, on this Bills offense. We just need them to hopefully get in some more pass-first game scripts. Ever since that week 1 shootout against the Ravens, Josh has only thrown the ball 25 and 28 times. Dwayne, at the risk of getting too far ahead of myself, I don't exactly see the Bills week 4 matchup against the Saints turning into a back and forth fantasy friendly shootout, but I could be wrong. Meanwhile, with the Dolphins, again, mentioned that late game interception from Tua Tagovailoa. And really, before that, man, it was just one real kind of constant swing pass to Devon Achane after another. I mean, it was good to see Tyreek Hill go out there, catch a touchdown, had a nifty little route there at the goal line. But man, there was even a deep downfield throw to Tyreek Hill. He did end up with, by the way, 112 unrealized air yards, second most on the week. week where, yeah, Tyreek came back. People were saying, oh, maybe he's, looking out for that paycheck, kind of didn't want to take that shot to the ribs. He also had to come back again, Dwain, for what seems like the 100th time ever and come to a complete stop on a go ball. All right. I'm just so sick and tired of Tua underthrowing everything out here. I really do wonder how much longer that leash is going to be as Mike McDaniel's seat continues to get hotter and hotter. So I do think the one big fantasy friendly note here was the at least early game emergence of one Ollie Gordon soaking up some of that goal line work. And for his credit, found his way into the end zone.
Yeah, Ollie Gordon definitely looked like at one point, I think I threw out the tweet like Ollie Gordon off the trash heap into the Raheem Mostert role, like in just one drive. He didn't sustain for the whole game, but he got more work than what he had seen. He had 43% of the rushing attempts in this game. 20% was his previous high, and that was in week 1. It'll be interesting to see what happens when Jalen Wright gets back. I
think he was back this game. They just didn't play him.
Oh, I didn't think he was back this game. He was out. I'm pretty sure he was out. I mean, I could be wrong. I had him listed as out, but we'll see what happens when he gets back. But Ollie Gordon, 43%. So yeah, I mean, it's a positive. Like he's a guy that in a deeper league you're going to have on your roster. He's already rostered in a lot of you guys that play in deep leagues, but 9.8 fantasy points in this game. 35 utilization score though. So I mean, he's not going to overtake, Achane. And like this version of the Miami offense is not the version from 2 years ago, at least so far, right? At least so far this year. So I look at Ollie. I don't know what you think. I mean, I think for me, he's still just a running back 5, like stash play. Like one game, it's positive. Like it's nice that he got more carries, but it'd be hard to rank him anything higher than that.
For the record, again, it doesn't look like Jalen Wright played a snap on special teams or on offense, but he did not have a game status on the final injury report. And I don't see him as one of the 7 guys who were ultimately inactive. So it does seem like for right now, it is Ollie Gordon's role. That said, Dwayne, we always go back to this situation when Devon Achane, as a rookie, actually was taken off the injury report, was active. He was like a healthy scratch.
He was on the active roster report. He was
okay. So
okay,
gotcha. So for now, Ollie Gordon wouldn't completely cement it, but yeah, going to be tough for Jalen Wright to emerge as anything in an offense that again aren't exactly expecting fireworks from. So it's going to be the Dolphins versus the Jets on Monday Night Football next week. God help us all. The good game that's supposed to be saving us would have been a lot more good a couple weeks ago. Unfortunately, that is Bengals and Broncos. So maybe a good Monday night to go, apple picking or something like that if you're into those sort of things. Let's get into Sunday, Dwayne. Time for the Xfinity game of the week, brought to you by Xfinity, introducing the 5-year price guarantee. One consistent internet price for the next 5 years, guaranteed. How about that? And how about those Philadelphia Eagles taking down the Rams 33-26? Philly covered as 3.5-point favorites after blocking a potential game-winning field goal, and big old Jordan Davis took it back all the way into the end zone. I love it, big man. Go get your touchdown. How many more chances are you going to have to do that in your life? Certainly one heck of a memory there. So over cleared at 45.5. But yeah, man, good on the Eagles for getting the win. And we're about to talk about their passing game. But I will say, Dwayne, if they had just kind of played this game, I would say they played the second half 10 times 10 times kind of in separate situations. I would like to think the Rams come away with 8 or so victories of that, because again, they had 2 field goals blocked inside the final 9 minutes, either of which would have won them the game. And they also, guys, blew a 26-7 second half lead. So I went out on a limb on Twitter, had just the idiotic idea to predict openly to other humans on this planet that the Rams were going to roll the Eagles, and Philly Nation certainly found their way back to that afterwards. And you know what? Good for them, Dwayne, because they got themselves another win, and they actually looked fun doing it this time. I think also thanks to you, man. You were mocking them a little bit at halftime. Jalen Hurts, AJB, Devonta Smith, felt like it still throw the football. What a concept.
Look, I'm a man of the people. I went on the rant on Thursday with you and Friedman, or on the Friday show, about how despicable this offense is. And I said, I hope that the Rams kick the piss out of them. They didn't have to actually win the game, but they did build the lead that we needed that really pushed the Eagles to need to throw the ball. So I don't know what it's going to mean in the future. Will they go right back to one tush push at a time? But at least now they've seen that they can throw the ball. They can be effective against a good defense. So A.J. Brown, 22.9 fantasy points today. Devonta Smith, 20 fantasy points. Dallas Goedert had 10.3. So yeah, I mean, look, we know they can still do this. Jalen Hurts had 29. He had the tush push, and he had 3 passing touchdowns, and that's what you were hoping for when you drafted Jalen Hurts. So I don't think there's anything else to add to the Eagles. Let's just hope that they throw the ball some more moving forward, because we know they have a bunch of really good players.
It was not easy, man. They had -1 net passing yards at
I
halftime,
saw
but
your
hey,
tweet.
started to get the ball to AJ Brown going on a little bit more, and ultimately had the go-ahead one to Devonta Smith at the goal line. Cool stuff there. Just keep an eye on guys. Lane Johnson, of course, their perennial stud right tackle, missed a lot of this one with a neck injury, so that is one of the bigger offensive line injuries we should be monitoring throughout the week. Meanwhile, on the Rams side of the football, man, Matthew Stafford bound up with 196 yards, 2 touchdowns, and a pick, but really was not his sharpest performance. More than a few throws to Devontae Adams in particular, which just seemed like they were not quite on the same page. So they were on the same page enough to complete a 44-yard touchdown. I would say both Adams and AJB got away with a little bit of a veteran push off there, but 6 points or 6 points at the end of the day. Devontae, again, 56 yards and a touchdown. Also drew a nice DPI, and again, mentioned Stafford missing on those throws. Puka Nacua also caught 11 of 15 targets for 112 yards, 35 targets on the season now, Dwain. Those are the second most in the NFL. And it's just amazing to me that, again, you almost look up sometimes. It's like, oh, Puka is kind of having a quiet game. It's like, oh, no, 9 catches, 91 yards, just doing Puka Nacua things. They continue to get him involved on the ground as well. Speaking of the ground, though, the real big story coming into this was, would Blake Corum actually be eating more into Kyren Williams' workload? And to answer that question for pretty much the 40th time over the last 2 years, Dwain, no, he didn't.
Yeah, I will say though, I mean, his role did hold from the week before, so it's more than what we've seen from Ronnie Rivers and some of these other guys behind Kyren Williams. So, week 1, Corum had 18% of the snaps. Week 2, up to 31%. Week 3 was 25%. But if you look at the rushing attempts, went from 4 to 22% to 26%. Routes went from 16 to 27 to 38%. So, again, I think all this really means, and we've already said this, is Blake Corum is solidly locked into the running back 2 role. Should not be available in any sizable league. Right now, looks like he's clearly ahead of Jarquez Hunter at this point. And if something were to happen, knock on wood, we don't want these things to happen, but we saw it today, man. A rash of injuries hit the league, and he would immediately be a massive waiver wire addition. I think we would assume that Corum would be going into that next game if Williams were to miss a game, probably thinking 65% of the work, 60% of the work. We might project it a little bit lower. Ewan would be in the chat, like trying to make me take it higher, guys. He would be like, put him in 80%. I'd probably start off at like 55, but it wouldn't surprise me at all if he had like 65% of the work. So yeah, major takeaways. Look, Corum does look like he's really locked himself in. I think it does slightly hurt Kyren if we continue to see this. The route participation, isn't a huge deal because Kyron's not really targeted that much anyway. But if Corum does start to snipe carries inside the 5, that's where it kind of gets hairy. Kyren was fine today.
I guess my point is, like, he's had 19, and now 22 touches. Like, yeah, I'd prefer 25. I prefer 35, but come on. We love this offense. Kyren Williams had a real nice day. I think he's looked pretty good out there. It's not like he's, the world's worst running back or anything like that. Looks good out there. Unfortunately, they have a 2-yard touchdown plunge at the goal line nullified due to a hold where the center pretty much tackled, the Eagles guy. So yeah, it wasn't exactly a bad call by any stretch, but again, would like to think he scores some other times. But yeah, Kyren Williams, very, very good at the game. Blake Corum, one of the best handcuffs in all of
Puka Nacua, wide receiver 1 overall the rest of the way with Joe Burrow hurt. And now we got CD, which we'll talk about.
Yeah, and how about this one? I don't think it's particularly close.
I don't either. I think Puka might have been wide receiver 1 anyway. We talked about it in the preseason before the Stafford injury. We talked about the fact that like he could be the wide receiver 1 very, very easily. There was enough of a question with Devontae Adams joining. And the thing is, like, Adams is still getting his 15.4 fantasy points per game, 93% route participation, 31% target share on the season. And we still have Puka going bananas, which we've seen this before. We saw Puka go bananas whenever he had Cooper Kupp. So yeah, I do think Puka's wide receiver 1 the rest of the way.
Let's move on to the Jaguars taking down the Texans 17-10. A fairly ugly rock fight sort of AFC South battle, but hey, kudos to Jacksonville for covering as 1.5-point faves. The undercash here at 43. So Houston was driving, man. And then unfortunately, Nico Collins fumbled. Trevor Lawrence wanted to lead the Jags down the field for the go-ahead touchdown for Travis Etienne. Really was a walk-in that Houston, understandably, was like, we need to get the ball back. Go ahead and just let him score. So I will point that out. But yeah, man, again, win is a win is a win. And kudos to Liam Cohen's Jaguars for now having 2 of them on the season. But yeah, man, it wasn't exactly the sort of get right pretty performance that you were hoping for. Then again, I wasn't necessarily expecting that against Will Anderson and the Texans in the first place. But yeah, man, Trevor Lawrence did have to deal with a week high 5 drops, only completed 20 of 40 passes, did not throw a touchdown. Mentioned the ETM one at the end of the game. Also saw Bashal Tutin scoring from the goal line. So we can start off there, Dwayne. Did we see any noticeable changes there between what was a 2-man backfield in week 2?
Not necessarily. I mean, it was pretty much the same. 26% of the snaps to Tootin in week 2. Week 3 was 18%. And then the rushing attempts were almost exactly the same. Week 2, 31%. Week 3, 27%. And then his route participation was 14% in both of these games. So kind of like the Corum thing. He's the locked in running back too, behind ETN right now. ETN did come down a little bit today, guys, and fantasy points 11.6, but still the snaps were there at 55%. So he's been at 57, 66, and 55 over the last 3 games. But he has 73% of the rushing attempts today. So he's had 57, 54, and 73. So while somebody might say, oh man, his snaps came down, his rushing attempts went up. He actually had a larger share of those. So I do think that ETN, 15.7 fantasy points per game right now on the season. He's locked into the running back 1 role, but Tootin's clearly the other guy you want to have on the roster.
Again, Tootin right up there with Corum as some of the most fantasy-friendly handcuffs in all of fantasy football, and certainly should be rostered ahead of Corum thanks to him actually having a little bit of standalone value that we can trust just a bit more. Wasn't exactly the bounce-back performance we were hoping for from Brian Thomas Jr. Only caught 2 of 6 targets for 55 yards. Did have an 18-yard gain nullified on an illegal shift, so was out there trying to do some good things. Also was pretty close on another couple balls. But Dwain, man, can this dude still fly? 46 yards on that skinny post. He registered a top speed per next-gen stats of 22.1 miles per hour. The only wide receivers to eclipse 22 miles per hour over these last 2 seasons are now Brian Thomas Jr., who has done it twice, and Kevontae Turpin, who weighs about 70 pounds less and is honestly a little bit more of a gadget guy as opposed to a wide receiver, as much as we love us some Kevontae Turpin. So no doubt that BTJ can do it. But man, just again, hopefully going to see a bigger day here ahead. Same thing for Travis Hunter, man, who caught only 1 of his 2 targets for 21 yards. But man, was that cool. Biggest flash at the NFL level, made a couple guys miss and truly just looked explosive. But you know what, Dwain? Sometimes you got Parker Washington out here. You got generational talent. You need to feed a team high 11 targets. And hey, Brenton Strange, here's 7 as well. So look, I know what you're going to say, and it's that we have the targets for BTJ. We got to trust the talent. But man, performances like this, Dwain, they're annoying. They are.
Yeah, they're very annoying. But all I would say is flip to the other side of this game and how people felt about Nico Collins after 2 games and then what happened today. Now, I will say, the Jaguars went with a rotation today at wide receiver, and that's what Diami Brown getting hurt. You know, he had a shoulder injury that caused him to leave the game. Brian Thomas had a season low 81% route participation, 16% target share. Parker Washington, 74% route participation. Ian's going to make me give him respect because he put up a 29% target share. And then Travis Hunter, man, 63% route participation, 5% target share, despite the way he looked, you know, getting that, you know, the play that you talked about earlier where he made a couple guys miss. You know, actually it was funny. Like he kind of saw the guy, he was about to turn it back inside and he saw where the defender was and he flipped his hips back outside and then made another dude miss. So I don't want to overreact to this, but obviously I think maybe Liam Cohen's trying to send a message. You know, I don't know. Or maybe this is just Shane Waldron. Shane Waldron is in this building. Shane Waldron just absolutely destroys everything. Maybe we just blame it on him. He did it to JSN 2 years ago. Last year he did it to Romo Dunze, and now he's bringing that act to, like, come on, Liam Cohen, get this guy out of your offensive skill room. Don't let him anywhere near these players. We'll see what happens, but I don't know. Maybe he's just trying to send a message. BTJ looked good on that last play. I'm going to continue to bet on the talent. I'm going to buy low on Brian Thomas Jr., but man, this is not ideal. I'd rather see him in a full-time role. I don't know what's going on for sure.
Next week, Jaguars are going to be at the 49ers, who could be without Nick Bosa for potentially an extended stretch. That really does take that matchup from one to maybe worry about a little bit to honestly not all that much. Not good for our DST shares, Dwain, but perhaps good for Brian Thomas Jr. and company getting a nice bounce back spot. So we're going to go back to well with BTJ, probably as a mid-low end wide receiver too. Travis Hunter coming in this one was wide receiver 44 in our consensus fantasy life ranks. I do not see that necessarily going up after this one. Meanwhile, for the Texans, Dwain mentioned it. Nico Collins, welcome back, my friend. 8 catches on 11 targets, 104 yards and a touchdown. Did lose a fumble, and the long touchdown was a little bit of the blown coverage variety. But hey, Dwain, we can at least take solace in there being one person that this Nick Caley, CJ Stroud-led offense apparently has any interest in getting the ball to. Because otherwise, man, like this has got to be the most disappointing offense in the NFL this year. Like, yeah, the Titans have sucked, but we kind of knew that was going to happen with Cam Ward, you know, a rookie quarterback. Like, man, CJ Stroud, Dwain, ever since big dogging dogging Caleb Williams at the end of that week 2 game last year, trying to act like he was all that. 20 touchdowns, 16 interceptions out there. Did not look good today. Again, had the really bad pick in the fourth quarter. And then when he was driving them down, had a chance to not win the game, but at least tie it up. Had an open Christian Kirk going down the sideline and could not put it on him. So disappointing performance, but at least we have Nico Collins. At least we have Christian Kirk looking healthy. Dwayne, was he back to a full-time role in his first game of 2025?
Yeah, 79% route participation, 22% target share, played from the slot 73% of the time. Only gave you 5.5 PPR points today, but we talked about it a little bit last week. No one else has necessarily stepped forward in this offense. It's not like the rookies really took the bull by the horns, if you will, and carved out these large roles over the first 2 weeks. So yeah, it does look like Christian Kirk will be the number 2 target in this offense because there is no way. We know that there's no way it will be Dalton Schultz in. So one other note I would give here on the Texans, we have seen this backfield really condensed down to 2 players. So it's Nick Chubb, 51% of the snaps, 60% of the rushing attempts, 41%. You guys already knew that he was doing his thing. Woody Marks, though, 49% of the snaps, 30% of the rushing attempts, and a 45% route participation. So it does look like we've kind of gotten rid of this pesky third guy. Dare Ogunbowale pour one out for Dare Ogunbowale. It does feel like he might finally be getting bumped out of playing time by Mr. Woody Marks. So if you're playing in a league that, is a deeper league, I do think that Woody Marks is a guy that honestly, as much as this team trails and has to throw the ball, like he could end up being kind of valuable. He was very good as a pass catcher in college. So Woody Marks is a name, might be called Jaquavius Marks in your league. Just really depends on where you play.
Good shout there. So Houston, again, their defense is so good that I think we're going to continue seeing kind of ugly games like this where maybe we aren't seeing them down enough for Woody to fully get going. But hey, next week going up against the Cam Ward-led Titans, man, you'd like to think they can get something going there. Also, speaking of defensive injuries, we do have Derek Stingley dealing with a rib issue, and he was ruled out. So if Calvin Ridley does, in fact, still have a pulse, maybe he could get something going in that matchup. Let's move on to, honestly, one of the more surprising performances of the day, and that was the Panthers taking down the Falcons 30-0. Dwayne, 30-0, and the Panthers had 224 total yards of offense. So again, a lot of mistakes from Michael Penix and the Falcons that we'll get to, but yikes, Atlanta, way to lay an egg in that one. So kudos to the Panthers for covering. They were 4.5 dogs coming in, obviously, under 44 points did cash here. So look, Bryce Young scampered in for a touchdown early. Tedrow McMillan had this one catch where I literally thought he was levitating off of the planet Earth as we know it. So that was freaking crazy. He's going to go on to have, I am sure, bigger days. Unfortunately, just couldn't get one going here. Jatavian Sanders had a cool hurdle out there before he suffered an ankle injury, so get better soon, Jatavian. But I think the real story, Dwayne, is this backfield where Rico Dowdle looking pretty good and also looking good enough to vulture a touchdown away from Chuba after he got tackled at the 1 yard line. So again, Chuba still racked up 19 touches and everything, and no, he couldn't find the end zone, but looked fine, particularly given some of those injuries the Panthers are dealing with on the offensive line. But did we see a, just tick up in usage from Rico, Dwayne, or was it more so just game script?
It was more game. It wasn't really much of a tick up at all. Hubbard still had 64% of the snaps, 63% of the design rushing attempts. But yes, due to the game script late, there was a little bit more work for Rico Dowdle, which is unfortunate because we would like to get that touchdown from, Chuba Hubbard. But when you look at Chuba Hubbard this season, he's still doing, fine. This is the kind of game script you're waiting on, though. If you roster Chuba Hubbard, this is the game where you get the 25 fantasy points. But he scored 17.9, 18.7, and 9.6 in this one. So, he's averaging 15.4 on an offense that we don't really love that much. It's shown some signs of life, but if you look at Bryce Young right now, this isn't fair to Bryce because he didn't need to throw the ball that much today, but threw for 154 yards in week 1, then in a massive trailing script threw for 328, and then today threw for 121. So, he's averaging 201 passing yards, but we've got 2 games right at basically 150 or less so far from Bryce Young. So still need him to really get going here, Ian. But again, game script, can't hold it too much against him. Like you said, he did scramble in. He's had 4, 1, and 2 scrambles over the last 3 games. So he's definitely moving around a little bit like what we saw at the end of last year. I don't want to say he saved his performance, but he kept it from being like a 5-point performance, with his scamper into the end zone. But yeah, Chuba looking like Chuba.
That's how Bryce was making his fantasy money at the end of last year. Again, that crazy stat, like last 6 weeks, only Josh Allen had more rushing touchdowns and fantasy points from rushing than Bryce Young. So I'm just happy to see, man, after that, again, kind of ill-fated comeback against the Cardinals, now seeing the Panthers put together some more actually good football. So no, I'm not going to confuse them as a legit playoff contender or anything like that. But man, after week one, I was worried that we were going to have to, again, watch just the absolute biggest dumpster fire version of this team out there. Looks like Bryce Young and his defense, man, pitching a shutout. How about that? At least not going to roll over so quickly. So we got the Panthers taking on the Patriots in Foxborough next weekend. Get your popcorn ready for that one, man. Let's talk about this Falcons offense. So that, Dwayne, I thought that if you're going to have a performance like this, it'll at least be fun. I don't know what changed Michael Penix from looking like someone who we talked about, like, oh, this could be Gen Z Jay Cutler, or he's got a little bit of Jameis Winston in him, into a Charlie checkdown. Dude, his average target depth last year was 10.2 yards. This year is sitting at 7.2, doing atrocious interception on a little check down swing pass. Same thing Cam Ward actually did in their game. I mean, this was rough, man. So they had 3 drops out there. I'm not saying it was 100% on Penix. London and Mooney have been banged up, but man, like small sample sizes from one rookie year in 3 games, not necessarily meaning everything. I guess that's 1 point. Zach Robinson, we can slander him if we want, but man, Dwayne, this Falcons offense, yeah, they can suck sometimes. We saw it today.
Yeah, I mean, right now, looking at Michael Penix just from, a fantasy points perspective, week 1, you got 24. Week 2, you got 5.3 fantasy points. Today, you got 3.8. Of course, he didn't play at the end of the game because they were getting their wheels blown off. Kirk Cousins came into play to close things out. But his yards per attempt have gone down from 7.1 to 6.4 to 4.8. So, yeah, that is really, really brutal. So we'll see if he can get it turned around. Obviously, they have the weapons there, but this is not ideal for really anyone involved, Ian. We now look at Drake London on the season, averaging 9.9 fantasy points per game. That's not what we signed up for when we took Drake London in round 2. Routes are there, 91%. Targets are there, 26%. Yards per route run, when you're playing with a quarterback that looks like a complete turd, it's a 1.50. And we've been through this before with Drake London. I mean, they're moving him around. He's getting to play from the slot 33% of the time. We just need Penix to come forward. It could just be a bad 2 games. You know how this stuff goes. But yeah, right now, not ideal.
You could be downgrading London to maybe mid-tier wide receiver 2,
yeah,
kind of like the BTJ thing.
Yeah, I think we have to because we need both of those quarterbacks to play better. I think BTJ is having more playing issues than what London is. London might still be working a little bit through that shoulder injury that he got at the end of week 1. We don't know for sure. He wasn't on the injury report last week, so I mean, we only know what the coaches tell us, which isn't always the full truth. But yeah, probably like that mid-range, just because we do need to see more from Penix. I will say if Penix gets going, though, like we obviously love Drake London. Mooney, real quick, week 3, he had a 27% target share. He actually led the team. And now through 2 games, he's got a 91% route participation and a 24% target share. So like we have some guys here we can like in fantasy if Michael Penix Jr. can get going.
90 unrealized air yards for Mooney. I just think he's almost a better fit with Kirk Cousins and their more timing-based attack. Penix is a little bit more, I think, needs to kind of see that tight window, and then he's not afraid to rip it, or at least he wasn't, definitely more so as a rookie, just maybe not the best match there. So Mooney, hey, still going to be someone that's going to be hard to rank more than 50 guys ahead of during any given week. But
the targets are encouraging, though, because we didn't even know if Penix would really target him, like, based on the way they play. So, I mean, but I do agree with you. Like, Kirk Cousins is such an anticipation thrower, and the way that Mooney wins on his routes is with timing and that ball being out right at his break. So he has a little bit of room to operate. It's like he's not going to break a lot of tackles if there's a guy right on him. But if you give him some space so that he can run after the catch, that's where Mooney can really that's where he can actually score some fantasy points.
Falcons will be taking on the Commanders next week. Don't have to find a new kicker, Dwayne, because after they kicked Young-Ho Koo to the curb, Parker Romo missed 2 field goals early on, 1 left, 1 right. Hate to see it, Dwayne. Hate to see it. Let's move on. We had the Steelers take down the Patriots 21-14. Shout out to Pittsburgh for covering as 1.5 point faves. The undercash here at 44.5. So Aaron Rodgers, not 1, but 2 BEA beautiful end zone tosses. 1 to DK Metcalf on a little fade. 1 to Calvin Austin to basically win things down there at the end. So good stuff there. Was expecting a little more from DK Metcalf in this spot, Dwayne. I do not believe Christian Gonzalez was suiting up. Only had 4 targets. Honestly, I've been impressed with what he's done with the targets. They've kind of gotten some screens. He's looked nimble, and he's also made some kind of big man contested catches that honestly you would expect from someone like him, but it hasn't always been a strength to his game over the years. Just too many games, man, where we're getting these 4 or 5 targets and really not enough. So clearly Pittsburgh wants to be a team that's going to be running the football, playing good defense. They actually did the latter today. They haven't really been able to run the football much, but that hasn't stopped them from trying out there. So really it's a situation where it comes down to DK Metcalf probably still being in that muddled wide receiver 3 range, but hopefully we can get Jalen Warren starting to do more things. Dwain couldn't get it going on the ground today, but to his credit, did tie James Cook for the week high in missed tackles forced with 8. And I mean, man, he had 56 rushing yards after contact and only 47 rushing yards total. So really wasn't much there. I think the good news, Dwain, is these last 2 weeks specifically have seen Warren take a nice step forward as a pass catcher.
Yeah, I mean, he looks great catching the ball. I do think it was Gainwell that sniped a touchdown from him today, which is completely maddening. But Jalen Warren now for the season, Ian, 14.8 fantasy points per game, 60% of the snaps, 71% of the rushing attempts for the team. So while we talk about Gainwell and how we're like, it's not like 70%, like that's really good. I mean, that's awesome. 41% route participation. We'd expect a little bit more, but when he's out there, man, he's getting targeted. He's got a 15% target share. I mean, 15% target share and getting 70% of the rushing attempts, like that's really good. So if you've got Jalen Warren, like honestly, I think we're going to have to move him into that borderline running back 2, maybe even low end running back 2. Now, we never trust Arthur Smith enough to make big moves with these players, guys. So we'll just have to slowly like inch it up because as soon as we do, like he'll do the rug pull. But this week, man, 78% of the snaps and 82% of the rushing attempts and a 63% route participation, a 27% target share. Is that even right? Like I'm looking at it. Yeah, it's right.
Jeez. He leads the team in targets this year, I think.
Yeah. Well, I think DK's got a 21% target share on the season. He's at 15, so DK's probably ahead of him. But yeah.
Jalen leads them in receiving yards, though, which is wild.
Okay, receiving yards, yeah. Yeah. But I'm with you on the DK thing. Just real quick, I'll just say 11.8 fantasy points per game this year. He's out there. He's actually told, Arthur Smith is going to beat him up if he pulls him off the field because he's got a 95% route participation, but a 21% target share. And that's something we talked about with DK when the season started. And before the season, we're like, okay, like, we've seen DK long enough. He really has been more like a wide receiver 2 archetype, but might he be able to take this step forward and become a wide receiver 1 with Aaron Rodgers, who we've seen pepper Devontae Adams in the past? And turns out not so far. Like Devontae Adams is really good at football. DK Metcalf, good at football. Not as good as Devontae Adams, at least so far. So 6.3 average depth of target is what's so interesting, though, Ian. It's Calvin Austin who has the old DK Metcalf role. He has a 16.3 average depth of target. Like on one hand, I feel like it's kind of encouraging because that means they're letting DK Metcalf do things besides just run down the field. But then also I'm like, well, if you're only going to give the guy like 4 or 5 targets, I just prefer they be down the field, so we get a chance to score the big touchdown. But yeah, right now, man, Metcalf, because you mentioned it, 23 pass attempts, 26 rush attempts today. This team doesn't run that many plays, and they're going to be very balanced. If we're talking about the Madden playbook, run balanced with Mr. Arthur Smith. So I think DK's in the wide receiver 3 conversation right now.
Again, Rodgers has looked good throwing the football. I mean, his mobility obviously isn't what it used to be. It hasn't been for quite some time now. But, man, he even had an incompletion last week where it was just like, whoa, rolling out to his right, zinging it 60 yards downfield. The man still does have one heck of a golden arm out there. So it's going to be Steelers versus the Vikings Sunday morning in Ireland, Dwain. So make sure you guys are the first to remind you, get those lineups set on Saturday evening so a ill-timed Sunday morning hangover doesn't hurt your fantasy squad. Over with the Patriots now. Just one mistake after another, man. I do not freaking envy anyone on that team that has to deal with Mike Vrabel's wrath after this one. Not 1, not 2, not 3, 4 lost fumbles out there, guys. 2 from Ramondre Stevenson, 1 from Antonio Gibson, and 1 from Drake May, who also threw an interception. Honestly, the interception wasn't totally on Drake. It was tipped, but he had 2 more dropped in the first half that definitely could have been his fault. Also took 5 sacks, and despite all that, Dwain, they lost by 7 in a game that really they, again, had no business being down to. So the good news is with May, despite all that, did throw 2 touchdowns, both of which went to Hunter Henry, who is obviously going off after I spent the majority of the summer slandering him. Also chipped in 45 rushing yards. It is wild to just continuously see Drake May find a way to get the edge. He will continue to, again, hopefully get better in real life, but certainly still be in that weekly QB1 conversation thanks to this fantasy friendly, again,
20.1 fantasy points per game. so far this season. 262 passing yards per game. Eventually, these books are going to catch up. Like, I just bet the Drake May overs every week. Like, and they hit every week. 1.7 touchdowns per game, 0.7 interceptions. You talked about, got a little bit of a turnover problem, but that's not terrible. And he's averaging 29 rushing yards per game and 0.33 rushing touchdowns per game. So Drake May, like, he's the archetype that we thought he was. And if you drafted him, like, he's in the top 10 quarterbacks rest of the way. Even if he's turning the ball over, they can't bench him. Like, he's the young quarterback. They're going to have to go with him. So Drake May, if you drafted him, you're probably starting him because we've got some other guys that went ahead of him. I mean, obviously you guys have one of the elite dual threat guys. You're starting them, but Drake May's in the top 10.
We can live with these interceptions, man. They're only -1 in most fantasy sites. And honestly, I still think the biggest difference that kind of separates real life and fantasy quarterback performance, it's sacks. Drake May took 5 sacks out there, didn't lose a single decimal fantasy point for him, man. So until we see that change, we're going to continue to, again, take advantage of these cheat codes known as dual threat quarterbacks. We did get a shakeup in the backfield, Dwain, because as I mentioned, Ramondre Stevenson fumbled twice, one of which was when he was about to cross the end zone. What'd they do? They benched Ramondre. They did not go to their second round running back. They went to Antonio Gibson, but then he fumbled too. So then finally they had no choice but to go to Travion, who, maybe remind you guys, had 0 fumbles during his luxurious career at The Ohio State University. Unfortunately, Dwain, we didn't see Travion make a ton out of his opportunities. Looked good as a receiver, but ended up turning 14 touches into about 47 total yards without a score. So again, would have been cooler if he busted one, but man, the door's opening.
Yeah, I mean, look, if you're a Travion Henderson drafter and you have heavy bags like we do, like, you couldn't imagine a scenario that would go better than this. Now, we don't know if this will mean anything at all next week, guys. We have no clue. But at least, like you just said, the door's open. And he only played 3 drives. There were 3 drives. Like, this was a very slow game. The way most of the time, like, you'll see teams have 10, 11, 12 drives in a game, guys. They only had 9 drives. And so the fumble by Gibson was on the 7th drive. Mondre actually had a fumble on the 1st or 2nd drive, and then the 6th drive. Then Gibson turned around and fumbled right away. Then it was Travion on drives 7, 8, and 9. Small sample, but 84% of the snaps, 90% of the rushing attempts, 71% of the route participation. He scored 5.7 fantasy points. I know that doesn't sound like a ton, but basically, if he does that for a game, that's 16, 17 fantasy points. Like, he's going to triple what that number is. Now, we don't expect the other 2 guys to go completely away, even if they decide to give Travion the starting job. But to your point, at least the door's open. It would have been a lot nicer, Ian, though, had Travion just immediately, like, ripped off like a 40-yarder for a touchdown just to kind of ice it. But he didn't average a lot of yards per carry. He still caught some passes and stuff, but, like, he's not quite up to speed yet on the NFL run game. So we'll see what happens. But like you said, the door's open, and if this small sample's any indication, maybe next week will be the week for Travion.
I know Pittsburgh had 2 really rough performances to start the year, but I still would be very surprised if we look up in December and say this is a bad defense. That said, Dwain, despite coming off a shutout, the Patriots do get the Panthers defense next week. That could be, again, a smash spot. God forbid, Carolina defense gets back to looking like the group that they've been more weeks than not over the last 2 or 3 years. I wanted to ask you, though, about the kind of wide receivers and tight ends. Again, great game from Hunter Henry doing his thing. He's someone that is probably going to continue to be ranked inside the top 15, maybe even starts flirting around with the top 12, given how the position is shaken out a little bit. But what did we get from the wide receivers? I did notice your boy Mac Hollins rocking a Pablo Sanchez t-shirt before the game. Shout out to the GOAT.
Yeah, I'm sure he didn't have his shoes on either, but there's nothing else to talk about here. It was Hunter Henry with 29 fantasy points and a 31% target share. Everybody else is in a rotation. Stephon Diggs, 55% route participation. There's just
what are you
nothing
paying
else.
For?
I don't know. I mean, maybe he's just not back yet. I don't know, man. I have no clue. I can't make any excuses like for what's going on with this offense right now in the receiver room, but nothing to see here is all I can say. Move along.
Sad. Also sad was the Bengals performance because they got beat down by the Vikings 48-10. This one was 34-3 Vikings at halftime, guys. So really never was competitive. Thanks in large part to Isaiah Rodgers. Oh my gosh, Dwayne, I know you're in an IDP league or two. I'm wondering if someone started this dude because he had a pick six, a scoop and score, and then also a forced fumble. That's incredible.
Yeah, the highest PFF grade ever given out, a 99.9 at the end of the game. So I did not go check my IDP scores, but yes, that would be very high. I doubt he was out there because most of our league doesn't play. Cornerbacks they just don't score that many fantasy points in the way it's set up for us. But yeah, I mean, bad game from Jake Browning. So we're going to talk about the winners first, right? So I'll wait for what you want to talk about.
It is just funny though. Like I'm imagining people like just going to check the scoreboard because you know there's these huge performances, and you go to check your fantasy game, and if you're not totally plugged into who your opponent's starting, there's just like that moment where you're like, well, hopefully they didn't start the guy with 4 touchdowns, and then you just see that huge score, and you're like, son of a. So, shout out Isaiah Rodgers.
Played him,
heck
you
of a
lost.
performance. Yeah, exactly. So, also shout out Carson Wentz getting back in the win column. Had 173 passing yards and 2 touchdowns. One to TJ Hawkinson and one to Josh Oliver. So keeping his tight ends happy. 49 yards for Hawkinson as well. Good to see him do a little something out there. Not exactly going to get back to treating him as a top 5 option, but he'll continue to be around that tight end 1 borderline. Wentz wasn't perfect, did take 3 sacks, but he was out there slinging it, Dwain. 9.1 yard average target depth. That was tied for the 3rd highest mark of the week. He was not dinking and dunking his way down the field. Only had to throw the ball 20 times out there. Again, it was 34-3 at halftime, but was good to see Justin Jefferson get 75 yards. That was more than Jamar Chase, and we are now contractually obligated to call Justin Jefferson Planet Earth's wide receiver 1 because he outperformed Chase in a game when they both had their backup quarterbacks. I do not make the rules. The real story, though, Dwain, in Fantasyland, Jordan Mason, $116 and 2 scores on the ground. Sure seemed like he had himself a nice little bell cow roll.
Yeah, 23.6 fantasy points today for Jordan Mason, and I excluded the 4th quarter because he rested most of that. So through the first 3 quarters of the game, he handled 76% of the snaps, 76% of the rushing attempts, obviously all the work inside the 5-yard line. He had a 64% route participation. So yeah, Jordan Mason, until we get Aaron Jones back, definitely in that mid-range running back too, like conversation in my opinion. I would like to see them have to play in a competitive game script with Carson Wentz at the helm and see what that looks like. But we obviously see that there's running back 1 upside here. Yes, bell cow roll indeed.
Again, Vikings going to be facing off the Steelers next Sunday morning. Jordan Mason going to have a pretty good chance, I would say, to be a consensus top 15 running back for that one. Meanwhile, with the Bengals, this was just a tough one. Man, you lose Joe Burrow. I can understand why the team had a bit of a letdown, but good God, week low, 3.3 yards per play. Browning took 3 sacks. Looked like he was seeing ghosts out there, tossed a couple of picks, just a 4.8 yard average target depth. But you know what, Dwayne, when you're under pressure on 58% of your dropbacks, I can kind of understand why he was more worried about just getting the ball out than anything. So Jamar Chase lost a fumble, did have his 50 receiving yards, but man, at this point, I think it's just Jamar Chase and I guess Chase Brown for the volume, but I'm hard pressed to wonder how much longer he's going to get that volume, Dwayne, because this guy on the season now has 93 rushing yards on 47 carries. For those counting at home, that is 1.98 yards per carry. I think his long run is like 12 yards or something like that. So we're not going to bench Jamar Chase no matter what. We already moved T. Higgins down to mid-tier wide receiver 3 range. I would like to think he has better days. Chase Brown, man, is just all of a sudden like turning into Kalen Ballers of 2025, where it's like, yeah, he gets all this volume, but what is he actually doing with it? I mean, can we even trust Chase Brown at this point, Dwayne?
Yeah, look, today, I mean, 48% of the design rushing attempts, but they were in a massive blowout where basically they got him out of the game. So Taj Brooks got out there and got 24% of the carries, but almost all of his came really late in the game. I would say if you play in one of these really gross skank leagues where there's nothing available, like Taj Brooks, I've seen like in a lot of FFPC real-time sports leagues, like it's been dropped and he's on the wire. I think it's bad enough that we need to be rostering Taj Brooks in those kind of leagues. I think that's the biggest takeaway here. It's hard to overreact too much though, just because like it was the game script went so nutty. Like Samaje Perine was actually out there for 25% of the snaps because they were just in trailing mode. And we've already talked about it. Perine has taken over that 2-minute offense. He had 100% of it today. And this is a game where they actually had to use the 2-minute offense, but like they could have used the 2-minute offense, guys, honestly, from like the first quarter on. Like that's how bad this game was. So it's difficult because he got sad at the end of the game due to the blowout. You're losing by so much. Samaje Perine plays, but to your point, like Chase Brown has not looked good, and now we're at 3 games. And we talked about it even about as we said last year, his volume was really great, but even on that, like we didn't see the explosiveness that really ties over to like the speed and everything that people talk about with this guy. We just didn't see it fully on display. And now kind of looking more like some of the worries we had earlier in Chase Brown's career with like, can this guy actually read the offensive line in front of him? So I think there is a crack in the armor. I'm not benching Chase Brown. He's still getting enough volume, and I'm assuming the Bengals can keep games closer than this. So I feel like he's still ultimately going to end up, scoring some fantasy points, but I don't think we can rule out the fact that like here in the next few weeks, we could see some more Taj Brooks, not just some blowouts.
And again, offensive line, banged up offensive line that already wasn't good to begin with, hasn't done him any favors. Similar thing with Ashton Genty and some of these other guys that we're going to get to. But again, this Bengals scoring upside. I know we were hoping, and we knew this was going to be a tough matchup against the Vikings, okay? So I don't want to completely throw it out. But guess what, Dwayne? We get to go travel to Denver on Monday Night Football to see what this Bengals offense has next. So I'm not exactly expecting the biggest bounce back for anyone involved in that one. So we'll know Samaje Perine suffered a thumb injury. I believe it was when he lost a fumble before halftime. Also, Noah Fant with the concussion. He was actually having himself a nice little start to the season as well. So right now, it's Jamar Chase and pretty much everyone else in Cincinnati. Good God, Joe Burrow. If there's ever a time to go to Germany, get some stem cells, inject whatever you have to, man. Get yourself better, hopefully soon. Moving right along, we had the Colts continue to impress, take down the Titans 41-20 out here. They did finally have to punt, Dwayne, but not before they, again, still just racking up points, many of which were thanks to none other than Indianapolis Jones himself. Danny Dimes, 228 yards and a touchdown through the air, chipped in 27 rushing yards. So again, not the biggest performance in the world in terms of fantasy, but 94.1 QBR. This dude was 18 for 25. I mocked the idea before the season, Dwayne, of Daniel Jones being this stabilizing force. I said they were talking about him like Alex Smith and not Daniel Jones. It's like Daniel Jones just took the best games of his career in 2022 and said, you know what, I'm going to start playing like that every single week out here. So Shane Steichen, the Colts offensive environment, obviously deserve a ton of credit, but man, Daniel Jones going to continue to be in that top 15 weekly conversation for us. And also, Dwayne, Jonathan Taylor, 3 touchdowns on the ground, 100 big ones on the ground rushing and stuff. If we had to redraft today, top 5 running back, if not top 2, not top 1. I don't know, man. Jonathan Taylor's going out there and balling.
Well, look, I'll just say this, like the Colts, how well they're playing and what Shane Steichen has done, with the scheme. Obviously, they've got players around them. We'll get to the receivers and the tight ends here in just a second. But I don't think anybody expected to see the Colts offense be this kind of a juggernaut, right? And we're 3 games in now. And the thing is, they've got a lot of wrinkles they can throw at you, and they've got a lot of different weapons that you've got to deal with. There's a lot of different things they can do in their game plan. They're very creative with creating space for their players. They do a lot of things that makes the defense, just has to pause that, like just that beat right at the snap, whether it's the motion, the RPO, the play action, all these different things, the screen game that they're doing. They got Tyler Warren out here throwing lead blocks for JT on these big runs. Like it's a very diverse team. Like, and we saw the Broncos played Justin Herbert really well today. I know Justin Herbert eventually got to his yardage, but the Broncos were all over Justin Herbert early in that game. And man, the Colts just made the Broncos defense look silly, to be honest, because they don't have to worry about just the guy on the outside playing Patrick Surtain. They can attack you with all these other little pieces on the inside. So major hat tip to Shane Steichen. Like, I think right now, like obviously front runner for coach of the year. We're really early, but he would have to be the front runner for that. And yes, because of that and how well this offense is playing, JT's a top 3 running back right now. I mean, the dude is really good. Like, so you guys know that JT's good, but this is the healthiest that we've seen him. He's averaging 25 fantasy points per game. 81% of the snaps on the season, 67% of the rushing attempts. And remember, in week 1, that was the fourth quarter they just gave to DJ Giddens because they were winning by so many points. So, I mean, the numbers are really higher than this. I mean, 75% route participation, and he's got a 10% target share, which is respectable. He's played 100% of the 2-minute offense snaps. This is the picture of like bell cow. Like Jonathan Taylor is an absolute freaking bell cow, and an offense is playing out of its mind. I mean, you could make an argument that I think you got to give CMC the running back 1 because he gets so many targets every single game. But JT, running back 2, like I could not argue against anyone. The only thing that could stop JT is if somehow defenses figure out how to, really rattle Daniel Jones, or if Daniel Jones were to get hurt, and then we're stuck with Anthony Richardson.
Again, can't say enough impressive things about Jonathan Taylor, who, again, going into this one, didn't hurt either. The NFL's all-time fifth leading rusher on a per-game basis. This guy really has done nothing other than rack up yards anytime he's been healthy enough to suit up out there on the football field. So I love the call with Shane Steichen, again, being the front runner for Coach of the Year. And honestly, at this point, Daniel Jones, Comeback Player of the Year. If that is still how that award's working, I know there's the whole issue with Flacco versus Hamlin. I'm pretty sure they now do have it mostly with on-field stuff going on there. You did mention the passing game, Dwain. A little bit of a quiet performance from Tyler Warren, only caught 3 of 5 targets for 38 yards. But again, Daniel Jones only had to throw the ball 25 times. This game was a 14-point affair by halftime. The big star was Michael Pittman, 73 yards and a touchdown. I would say this is just the one kind of annoying part of the offense. We did have Alec Pierce suffer a concussion, unfortunately. Maybe that could help, make the targets a little bit more smooth. But we know they're going to put up yards here now. Michael Pittman, Josh Downs, they're both pretty qualified. Maybe we got to dig in a little deeper to see if there's some man zone stuff going on here. But do you have a read, Dwain? Because otherwise it's just going to be tough to really move either guy out of that wide receiver 4 range, despite knowing that they are good players and a good offense.
I mean, Michael Pittman's averaging 15.8 fantasy points per game on the season. He's got a 22% target share, a 2.24 yards per route run. This is the best he's ever played. He's had a higher target share than that before, but he's playing really good. He's not leaving the field. I think he's clearly over Downs right now. And then you got Tyler Warren as the guy that's on the field next most at 82% route participation. He actually leads the team with a 24% target share. This dude's got a 2.41 yards per route run as a freaking tight end. These two dudes are they need to be in starting lineups. If you play in an 8-teamer, I get it. Pittman might not be out there. I do agree with you. It can get dicey. We've seen the Colts basically leading for the most part, and that is keeping Josh Downs off the field because they go to their heavy tight end stuff, and they just don't need to be back there running 11 personnel in the fourth quarter. They don't have a reason to. Just freaking hand the damn ball off to Jonathan Taylor and just salt the thing away. So it'll be interesting to see them get in some games that, really shoot out. Today obviously was not, one of those. We're about to talk about the Titans. Did not look good at all. But I think there's going to be games where we know that Josh Downs can be more of a thorn in the side, but at the same time, in those games, they may have to pass more and throw more. And does it all just kind of even out? I think with Michael Pittman, for me, I was thinking about him before the show because I was running through all the notes that I had written down. He's in the wide receiver 3 conversation, but he's really performing like a wide receiver 2, so far this season. So I think he's clearly the top guy right now. And obviously, we all love Tyler Warren. So just real quick on Daniel Jones, man, 22.7 fantasy points per game, averaging 272 passing yards per game. In a league, Ian, where a starting quarterback has averaged 215 over the last 3 years. He's averaging 1 passing touchdown per game, and he's also rushing for 18 rushing yards per game, and he's averaging 1 rushing touchdown per game.
I know.
He's, like you said, he's going to be in the top 15 conversation. I had him as my QB 8 this week. He's going to be in the top 12 a lot.
Yeah, I had him top 12 this week. I like to think I said top 12, but it is getting late here, so maybe I did say top 15. So my apologies, hand up everyone there. But yeah, man, again, can't say enough good things about Daniel Jones. Going to this one, Dwain, Josh Allen led the NFL in terms of carries inside the 5-yard line with 5. Number 2, Daniel Jones at 4. That's not among quarterbacks. That is among everyone, guys. So it was nice of Daniel to give. Yeah, it was nice. It was nice of him to give Jonathan Taylor a few touchdowns here. Obviously, didn't need to give it to DJ. But again, the fact they're willing to give him some of those carries inside the 5, man, really can rack up, a difference in fantasy land in a hurry. So good stuff there. Again, keep an eye on Alec Pierce with a concussion. Had another 67 yards to his credit. That man is good at football. AD Mitchell will be the next man up. He did draw a 37-yard defensive pass interference to his credit today. Over in Tennessee, yeah, man, it's just very rough at this point. So next week is going to be in Houston for the Titans. And I was hoping, Dwain, that this could be the performance where we saw something out there. And I guess we kind of did. We got a couple, second half touchdowns, but man, still wasn't easy. Cam Ward, I think it was on his first or second pass of the day, just threw a horrible, kind of loop the throw out into the flat, immediately pick 6, wound up getting his way to 219 yards and a touchdown, found Alec Manor late, but man, can't get anything going with Calvin Ridley, caught just 1 of 7 targets for 27 yards. Shout out to Chigakonkwo for leading the team with 66 receiving yards, but man, Dwain, Tony Pollard finally finds the end zone. He has 12.5 fantasy points on a 90% snap roll. This is a dumpster fire of an offense right here.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, so let's just talk about the season numbers here. Pollard is averaging 10.3 fantasy points per game, despite having a 90% snap share on the season. Basically, he has Jonathan Taylor's role, and he's scoring 15 less fantasy points per game. And that's the difference that an offense makes. Playing,
Yeah.
right now with the way the Colts are playing versus the way that the Titans are playing. Alec Iomanner, the leading receiver on this team at 10.9 fantasy points per game with a 20% target share, 13.4 average depth of target, scored 13.8 fantasy points this week. Ridley leading the team in targets at 23%, rarely leaves the field, 90% route participation, but averaging 6.5 fantasy points per game on the season. Like, this is brutal. Chigo Okonkwo, 8 fantasy points per game. So yeah, Ridley, I mean, he's in wide receiver 4 territory. I think most of us had him there anyway. And honestly, he and Iomanner are really close. Like, it's a 1A, 1B between those two guys. Like, I wouldn't have thought that it would have been that close, like at this point in the year, but hat tip to Iomanner. But we can't even get that excited about that. Like, it's nice, but I mean, Cam Ward, yeah, he threw for 219 today, but he averaged 5.8 yards per attempt. Like, look, he's a rookie quarterback, and it's showing right now.
Brian Callahan, Zach Taylor. I don't like using the word fraud, Dwayne, but the shoe fits. Let's move along. We had the Commanders winning the Widowmaker spot. Shout out Matthew Friedman, 41-24 over the Las Vegas Raiders. Washington covered as 3-point faves, the overcash here with ease at 43.5. Obviously didn't have Jaden Daniels in this one, but no problem. Marcus Mariota went out there and again put forward a pretty nice performance. Did lose a fumble on a long run, but otherwise, man, played a pretty clean game. Only took 1 sack, 207 yards on just 21 attempts. Again, ran in for a touchdown. Almost had a second one where he got tackled at the 1-yard line. So good stuff from Mariota. And man, in this kind of just list of backup QBs that we might have to deal with for another couple of weeks, potentially, I would now be leaning towards Mariota over the Jake Brownings and honestly, whoever the Giants are going to be putting out there. Russell Wilson, that's who I meant there of the world. So, yeah, man, good stuff from Mariota. But the big surprise, Dwayne, was this backfield. No Austin Eckler. We all expected Bill Krosky-Merritt to take over. Was not the case. Chris Rodriguez got the start. He got 4 straight carries. And, to the other guys' credits, Jeremy McNichols had a sweet 60-yard touchdown where he was breaking some tackles. But, man, not the sort of usage or even performance we wanted to see from Bill Krosky-Merritt in his first game without Eckler.
Yeah, we're going to have to move on from the song. Bill. This is just gross. This is like a 3-way split. 39% of the snaps to Bill, 39% of the snaps to Chris Rodriguez, 26% of the snaps to Jeremy McWeapon. I mean, it's so gross. I mean, we got 36% of the attempts to Rodriguez, 26% of the attempts to Bill, 13% to McNichols. If you look at the route participation, it was 32% for Bill. He did lead the team. McNichols was behind him at 27%, but got 100% of the 2-minute offense. And then you had 14% route share to Rodriguez. So Rodriguez is basically early down guy, probably going to get about a third of the work. Bill's like all the stuff in between, and McNichols is probably the best we could say right now is probably more the passing down back. I think this is all still TBD, but the bottom line is like it's discouraging because like you really would expect Bill to like take over at this point. And I still, again, like if you have to put a chip on one of these guys for the rest of the season, I do still think that it's him, but to have everything work the way that it has, like you would really expect, Krosky-Merritt to have a bigger role in this, and he didn't. So, I mean, he's a low end running back 3. Rodriguez will be like a running back 5. Like Rodriguez, like, I mean, this is a game they led. And he didn't score a touchdown. So it's like he got the first drive. So, I mean, you can't trust any of this. Like, I think Bill's the only one I would still play, and I'm not excited about it.
How does that conversation go? Hey, Chris, I know you've been a healthy scratch because we prefer Bill over you on early downs. But now that Austin Eckler's out, we're going to start you and feature you on early downs over Bill. I just don't get it. So, hey, Commanders scored 41 points, had some help, with defense and all that going on. But
Debo had more carries today too. They got him more involved.
He did.
Yeah. So
he only had 2 snaps in the backfield still. He had 1 the few weeks before. But you know what? I don't think they're exactly putting him back there to do anything other than
3 carries today.
So
Yeah.
3 carries, 18 yards, helped make up for just 11 yards receiving. Did bust a nice 69-yard kick return, I believe, at the beginning of the game. So, again, good to see Debo going out there making plays. Would think that, again, we'll get some higher target shares once again when Mariota is not throwing the ball
McLaurin
just
hurt.
21 times. I know, quad injury, probably being too much of a baller on his way to hauling in that 56-yarder down the sideline. Got tackled at the 1 freaking yard line, Dwain, but that did get Bill his touchdown. So we got Luke McCaffrey touchdown sighting, maybe because of it, maybe a little bit more Jalen Lane instead. So we'll just see what happens with the Terry injury. But yeah, I don't think people need us.
They didn't. Noah Brown was also inactive for this one. So it was Jalen Lane and Luke McCaffrey for you absolute sickos that are in those skank leagues. Those were the two guys sharing the routes. They each had a 50% route participation. Obviously, McCaffrey was the guy that came through. He scored the touchdown, 17% target share, 14.6 fantasy points. And our own Thor Nystrom, I know, is a Luke McCaffrey truther.
Jalen Lane, nice punt return touchdown. I think I said defense before, but it actually was special teams being special there for the Commanders. But yeah, only thing I was going to say, Dwayne, it's a good point. Again, skank leagues, I know we're in those. We will be looking at the Luke McCaffreys.
Most of you shouldn't be touching these players.
Correct. And the big I would say, okay, if we are going to be missing Terry McLaurin for any amount of time, it's a nice bump for Debo Samuel. It's a nice bump for Zach Ertz too. I know he didn't have a huge game out there, but as much as we want Ertz to go away, Dwayne, this is a guy who, when we have Jaden Daniels out there, man, legit is producing like a top 5 tight end.
Yeah, for sure. So Ertz, he's in the top 12 tight ends. And we do want to have Jaden Daniels back out there. Obviously, having Mariota, it was nice. He averaged 9.9 yards per attempt today. They really had the Raiders defense on the ropes as far as, mixing up the play calling and everything. 20.3 fantasy points for Mariota, but we know that the ceiling is just much higher from a passing standpoint with Jaden Daniels out there.
Final note, shout out 35-year-old Bobby Wagner, 11 tackles and 2 sacks for his troubles. Old man still got it as long as you're not making him cover fast running backs. Over with the Raiders, 289 yards on 29 attempts for Geno Smith. Not 1, not 2, but 3 touchdowns. Did take 5 sacks out there. It wasn't the cleanest performance, but man, just see him continue to push the ball downfield despite being pressured on 65% of his dropbacks. Again, week 2 was gross against the Chargers, but Geno, if you guys are desperate for a QB, really, I do think offers you a bit, potentially a lower floor, but a bit more of a volatile, I guess, range, which is what we're looking for, honestly, in kind of the dumpster depths of that QB2 tier. But Dwayne, man, the real star of the show, Trey Tucker, the man that Geno Smith comped to Santana Moss, caught 8 of 9 targets for 145 yards and all 3 touchdowns out there. Trey Tucker, Dwayne, I said Justin Jefferson was the best wide receiver in the NFL. I don't know, man. We got to worry about Trey Tucker now.
Yeah, Trey Tucker went off for 40.9 fantasy points in this game. So Trey Tucker, if you look at what he's done this season, he's now at 19.7 fantasy points per game. When you drop a 40 burger, it's going to help you. But he's at 95% of the routes for the season, and he now has a respectable 19% target share. That's not a lead or anything, but that's definitely better than anything we've seen from him in his career. 12.5 average depth of target. So not just being the guy that's running off coverage down the field. That's now Dante Thornton. So they're giving him some, if you guys are watching any of these games, he's getting some of those deep crossers and stuff that we used to get from Tyler Lockett, which is who actually Geno Smith compared him to in the preseason. And I made fun of Geno for doing that. Geno knows ball. I don't know ball, but I'll just say this. Trey Tucker, he's reached a 20% plus target share in 5 of 18 games where he had at least an 80% route participation. So don't go bananas, guys. I'm not saying don't add the guy off the waiver wire if you're in one of these deeper leagues. Trey Tucker's obviously on the menu. He's playing a different role than what he has before, but at the same time, I know the 40.9 points is going to probably make some people bid a little bit more than they should. So I don't see him as something where I'm like, oh my God, this is a wide receiver too. I still see Brock Bowers as being, once he's healthy, the channel for this offense. Jacoby Myers is still going to get more targets than this guy. So I think you're talking about someone's third option for the Raiders, right? And they hopefully want to get into games where they actually want to run the ball more and let their rookie Ashton Genty really cook. So I'm happy for Trey Tucker. I know I put him on the Fugazi list, so ultimately that made him come out and do this because I put Nick Westbrook-Ikini on the Fugazi list, and he kept catching touchdowns even though he had a low target share. So that's how this works, guys. He's probably gonna catch some more touchdowns. Just don't go overboard.
Again, can't say enough great things about Tucker's performance, and we thank Dwain for, again, inspiring it in the first place. Unfortunately, as I mentioned, he caught all 3 touchdowns, which meant none to go around for Jacoby Myers, who had 63 yards, or Brock Bowers, 38 yards. I know Bowers playing banged up, but man, Michael Mayer with a concussion wasn't even out there for a large portion of this game. And just back-to-back games now with Brock Bowers under 40 yards. We also got Chip Kelly really not doing anything for this backfield in terms of making life easy. 62 of Ashton Genty's 63 rushing yards came after contact. Can we try like a swing pass, a screen here and there, get the guy who you felt good enough to spend the 6th overall pick in space, Dwain? I'm not saying he needs to have 100% snap share, but it is just wild to me that Zamir White and Dylan Laube are soaking up these opportunities that at this point behind the offensive line seem like the only chances they have to get out in space. We see the flashes from Genty, all right? Now, it's disappointing. I get it. I'm not trying to make this out into a situation where he's just been completely held back by, incompetent coaching, but it certainly hasn't helped. And here we are now, man. And just, Dwain, if you didn't know anything about Genty and you just had to look at the role in the offense, I mean, this is like a low-end RB2.
Yeah, it doesn't look good right now. He's like the running back 12, like on fantasycalc.com right now. So like his value hasn't really been changing. Like if it continues to fall, like I would still be trying to buy low on Genty. I know some people are going to hear that and think it's crazy, but just remember, guys, like we get off to some of these starts, these rookies do typically get better like as the season goes. But like Ian said, like the big thing here is you've got Dylan Laube coming in and taking 2-minute offense. You've got Zamir White taking long down and distance stuff from him sometimes. And then that, like you said, Ian, then Zamir White stays on the field for like the next 2 plays. It's so aggravating. But here is snap shares. Obviously, week 1, they loaded him up 86%. Then it went to 57. Then it went to 60. His rushing attempts, 86, 65, 61. Route participation, 55, 38, 47. So, I mean, we're probably this last 2 weeks is like reality right now. Probably about 60% of the snaps, 60, 65% of the rushing attempts. And the other thing that's really challenging Genty, honestly, I think these numbers could work for him and he could probably be okay, but they're just throwing the ball all the time. Like now, some of it was obviously game script induced today, but they've been a heavier pass offense than what we really expected the Raiders to be with Pete Carroll. So a lot of different factors playing a role here for Genty. Obviously he hasn't looked electric either. Like I think he's looked fine. Like he's running with power. He's a patient runner, all those things, but hasn't broke a really long run to really save anybody. So I get it. Yeah. I mean, I'm probably having like mid-range running back too, but yes, he's, I don't blame you if you're going to rank him down there as a low end running back too.
Bears are up next. Come on, guys. I saw Javonte running through that. I know that Cowboys offensive line is a little bit better, but come on, Genty. Come on, Chip. Come on, guys. Again, got the Raiders versus the Bears next. Commanders at the Falcons in a Marcus Mariota revenge game special potentially. But yeah, get better soon, Mr. Jaden. Speaking of the Browns, I don't know if we were speaking of them, but the Browns took down the Packers 13-10 out here. How about that, man? Cleveland never gets a chance to win these games. They won outright as 7.5-point dogs, the under cash of 41.5. And this is what I mean by that, guys. The Packers had a 43-yard field goal blocked, which is 27 seconds left. The Browns recovered it, obviously got the ball, and they hit their own game winner instead. So, it wasn't a lot going on offense. Flacco just threw for 142 yards on 36 attempts. The David Njoku was their leading receiver with 40 yards. Shout out to Harold Fannin. He somehow forced 6 missed tackles on just 3 catches, which is crazy to see from a tight end. So I'm sure there will be bigger and better days ahead for the pass catchers here when they are not facing, again, arguably the best defense in the NFL. But the real story here, Dwain, was Quinshon Judkins' first full game. And man, oh man, the Browns feel like featuring him with a true every down workload.
Yeah, 16.5 fantasy points today for Quinshon Judkins. If you guys watched him, he had a couple of really good runs, a really good one late. 58% of the snaps, but 95% of the team's rushing attempts today. 100% of their snaps inside the 5-yard line. 38% route participation. So the 2-minute offense and stuff still went to Jerome Ford. He played 33% of the snaps, but it was 75% of the 2-minute offense. 6% target share still, though, for Quinshon Judkins. So like it's when he's out there, he's still getting a little, like 6% target share is not great, but on a 38% route participation, his targets per route run are still good. So I think the key here is like there's two things. The Browns offense we're obviously scared of. Joe Flacco's averaging only 210 passing yards per game, right? I know we had that cool streak coming into the year where it's like Joe Flacco, like 270 yards per game. Wheels have kind of fallen off on that right now. And we don't know how much longer we'll have Flacco at the helm, but obviously this game today helps. I think the positive side of it is like the Browns defense might be the best like unit in the league.
So
like offensive or defensive side of the ball. Like they're playing very good right now. And that can keep these games against a really good offense like this with the Packers. It can keep it close enough for a player like Quinshawn. Now we say that last week, right? The Ravens obviously got out to a lead that would be a problem for a guy like Quinshawn Judkins if he's not going to get the passing down roll. So I think you're in for some volatility here. But I think the silver lining, if you're looking for one, it's that the Browns defense is good enough that they could probably keep a lot of these games closer than what we think. And if they do, man, Quinshawn's going to pile up some touches. And he just looked really good. He's looked good in both games. I know it's a small sample, but he's looked a lot better than Nash and Genty or these other guys. So I mean, who knows how much longer we have Joe Flacco, but I like the defense.
Browns are at the Lions next week. That is going to be a game.
Oh, Ian, real quick.
Probably. Yeah.
Dylan Sampson down to 7% of the snaps. So if you guys got to if you have to cut him, you cut him. I mean, it just is what it is right now.
Keeping Jerome Ford out there. Hey, those veterans, man, they can do this sometimes. So again, Browns going to be traveling to Detroit next weekend. Going to be probably a double-digit dog then. Will be a good, again, test for that defense once again, and we'll see if Joe Flacco can keep that job. At this point, though, Dwayne, I will say, I mean, we're talking about Flacco keeping the job, but you said it, man. He's not playing well at all. I mean, even his advanced numbers really are rough. I know this was a tough game, but
3.9 yards per attempt today.
Yeah. I mean, hey, Judkins doing his thing, man. I think DeJuan Jones, they had an offensive line injury, so hopefully they can keep on, doing their thing, just hopefully creating holes for the dude. But man, the way he's going, 87 of his 94 rushing yards came after contact. Like maybe this dude can just keep on keeping on, even in, a less than ideal situation. Because at this point, swapping out running for Shador or Gabriel, I don't know if it's going to be as big of a drop off as we thought it might be a few short weeks ago.
Yeah, I think Quinshawn's a low-end running back too now. We could be talking about him more as a mid-range running back too if he has another performance like this and the Browns defense continues to play as well as it has. I don't know that we'd be able to push him up much higher than that unless he started to get some of the passing down work, because he's going to be in that volatile, range of if the Browns are getting their wheels blown off, like you could run into like a 5-point game, from Quinshawn.
Yeah. Tillman, 26 scoreless yards. Judy, 17 scoreless yards. Did draw an end zone DPI and got kind of dropped the ball afterwards, so he was close. Had 73 unrealized air yards on the day. Were they still in full-time roles, Dwayne? Because the Browns really have been trying to make Isaiah Bond happen early on in games.
Yeah, I don't have anything to add here is what I wrote down. It looked all business as usual.
Okay.
And there's just too many mouths to feed with a quarterback that's not playing well. I mean, you don't really want to be playing any of your Browns options, to be honest, like in the passing game. I honestly think like the only player you want to play from the Browns right now is Quinshawn Judkins.
Yeah. Over to the Packers side of things. Guys, this did not make my quad box, I'm sure you can understand. So I caught a little bit on red zone, but I can't, I just want to be careful before completely ripping apart Jordan Love because I didn't have my own two eyes on the entire game. But good God, Dwayne, 183 yards on 25 pass attempts. He took 5 sacks out there, which, you're facing Myles Garrett and company. I get it. But a 1.9 yard average target depth per True Media. That is the lowest single game mark going back to October of 2023 with a minimum of 25 pass attempts. I mean, we know that they never really like getting the ball to Josh Jacobs in the passing game. He had 9 targets today out there, and it really did seem out of necessity more than anything. So just kind of sucks to see because this Packers offense and Jordan Love himself really were looking great those first 2 weeks. Now those offensive line injuries clearly finally came back to bite them and everything. But man, just 3.8 yards per play, Dwayne. I mean, they had 5.7 and 6.4 during those first 2 weeks. The Browns are now responsible for 2 of the 9 lowest performances of this season. And my God, man, they are now the only defense still allowing negative rushing yards before contact per carry from opposing RBs. So kind of similar to what we did for the Bengals in week 1, where they saw them play the Browns and just really do nothing in the second half. I'm willing to more or less write this performance off in terms of the efficiency that guys like Josh Jacobs in the passing game weren't able to have. All that said, Dwayne, what did we see from the wide receivers without Jaden Reed, and was Tucker Kraft in a full-time role after suffering that knee injury last week?
Yeah, I was just going to say, like, you're playing the Browns. You also don't have Jaden Reed and Tucker Kraft dealing with an injury. Tucker Kraft had a 71% route participation. He's been up over 80%. So did seem like they were limiting him a little bit. He only had a 16% target share. Matthew Golden is really the story here. He scored 10.1 fantasy points per day. Not great, but like it's a step forward. But an 84% route participation. That was second on the team behind Romeo Dobbs. 16% target share. We definitely want to see that be a little bit higher. Targets per route run were a little more decent, though. 2 yards per route run today. 26% of his reps came from the slot, and 8.5 ADOT. So they're kind of, they're not just like sending him downfield. He's getting these targets down the field, but they're also using him around the line of scrimmage. 25% of his targets came on screen plays. So it does feel like Golden is a guy that when they get into a game where the matchup isn't as tough as the Browns, he can be a guy that they're really trying to create some mismatches with. It could really be him and Tucker Kraft being those two players that they're designing looks for.
Getting good separation, too, based on some of the stuff we're seeing from guys like fantasy points. So, again, still believing in Matthew Golden. And I will say the 134-yarder he had down the sideline, Love kind of was leading him out of bounds a little bit. Couldn't really catch it and run. But, man, if he had a chance, would have been another, it's another, I guess I should say, coulda, woulda, shoulda.
Just play the Cowboys next weekend.
Golden. Oh, there we go.
100 yards and 2 touchdowns.
Packers Sunday night. So we'll probably be able to start that one at halftime, Dwain. Worst things in the world. So John Fitzpatrick was the only one to find the end zone for the Packers because of course he was. So as Dwain said, again, Packers at the Cowboys on Sunday Night Football and the Browns at the Lions. Dwain, over under 900 Micah Parsons sideline shots we get during that game.
Give me the over.
Yeah, I think that's a pretty soft line. By myself, we will watch the film and get better. Last game of the early afternoon slate, we had the Tampa Bay Buccaneers take down the New York Football Jets, Jets, 29-27. Jets did cover a 6.5-point dog, so kudos to them for that. Over cash here at 43.5. This one got wild late, man. Like Tyrod scored a couple touchdowns in garbage time, and I was like, all right, whatever. But Tampa was going down, about to kick a field goal and take, a 2-score lead. And then one of many blocked field goals of the day the Jets managed to get through. And then it must have been, man. Like that was ridiculous. It was.
There were penalties on some of them. There were more than the ones that actually happened. Some of them got called back.
Fundamentals, guys. Don't leave home without them. Too many field goal block teams certainly were doing that today. But yeah, man, again, then Baker went down and drove the Bucs down for the game-winning field goal anyway. But got a real fun, gif of Aaron Glenn just losing his mind on the sideline in jubilation as the Jets were going down. So almost a feel-good story, but Buccaneers escaped with the W. Baker, 233 passing yards, chipped in 44 rushing yards, had a real nice 10-yard scramble, man. He's continuing to do it, Dwain. I know we thought this would regress, but maybe a lot of it could just be this offensive line being down 3 starters, almost forcing Baker to have to run more than he would like. And unfortunately, might have to start running more than he would like because I don't know who else he could be throwing the ball to, man, because Mike Evans is having his yearly hamstring injury. We'll find out what the severity of it is, but man, it certainly seems like one that could keep him out multiple games if hamstring injuries in the past have been any indication. So we'll see what happens there. We did hear that Tristan Wirfs and Chris Godwin could be on the way back as soon as next week, so that certainly would help. But I'll tell you what, Dwain, Chris Godwin can come back. We're still not ranking him as number 1 wide receiver in Tampa Bay. That man is a Mecca Ibuka for as long as Mike Evans is sidelined. Continued to look great out there. Made a one-handed catch with Sauce Gardner in his hip pocket. Had a couple big catches on the ultimate, game-winning drive as well. Did we actually see limited snaps, though, Dwain? Because there was kind of conflicting reports from Rap Sheet and Schefter this morning.
No. No, I mean, I think the game just kind of forced it. I mean, and Ibuka, look, man, this guy's averaging 17 fantasy points per game on the season, Ian, with a 90% route participation. He's got a 22% target share now, working from the slot 40% of the time. 24% of his targets come on screen. So they're just doing all sorts of stuff to get him involved. If you look at Baker Mayfield, you mentioned his scrambling, 38.7 rushing yards per game right now for Baker. Like he's absolutely out there losing his mind. Passing, not so great, 205 yards, but he's getting 2 touchdowns passing per game, and that's really helping out Baker. So he's averaging 20.1 fantasy points. Baker, maybe he's just one of these guys that Baker's going to find a way. Like it just doesn't really matter. You could take this one thing away from him, but he's gonna find a way to score these points in this other way. I'm starting to feel that way about the man. Running back, just real quick. Bucky Irving on the season, 15.5 fantasy points per game, 76% snap share, 75% of the rushing attempts, 65% route participation, 15% target share. obviously this offensive line needs to get Tristan Wirfs back because we were without 3 really good linemen at this point, with Cody Mock. And then we had, why am I blanking on the other guy besides Wirfs? Yeah. But anyway, so missing 3 of their starters. And if you look at Irving, like, didn't have a ton of yards today, but man, the role is so huge. And like that 15.5 fantasy points per game with all the injuries they're dealing with in their offensive line, you'll still definitely take it, man. And that 15% target share, like that's probably going to keep on if we have games without Mike Evans. We saw that last year with Bucky Irving. Whenever they got banged up, they designed a lot of stuff for him. So, yeah.
He had a sweet catch in the flat where he did his typical Bucky Irving thing, reverse field, making missed tackles, along the way. Just really couldn't get much going on the ground. And he's not the only guy. I mean, my dog Deborah was pissed off about it too. I don't blame her. But I mean, just guys, Dwain, this year, under 3.5 yards per carry right now. Christian McCaffrey, Omarion Hampton, Saquon Barkley, Bucky Irving, Josh Jacobs, Ashton Genty, James Conner, Chase Brown, amongst other ones. So again, some of the best running backs we are seeing really undone by some poor early season offensive line performances. Hate to see it, but again, we do know we are getting Tristan Wirfs back sooner rather than later. Should be bigger and better days ahead for Bucky. But to Dwayne's point, the fact that this is our floor outcome seemingly really is great to see, really fulfilling that Devon Achane prophecy that you talked about, Dwayne, where even in the absence of elite efficiency, we're getting enough volume, earned volume, I might add, to more than make up for it.
Hey, real quick.
Yeah.
Ian, the data updated.
Okay.
Earlier, whenever I pulled it, so Egbuka did have a little bit of less of a roll a day. Not that it's going to matter. He's probably healthy by next week, but it was 70% routes.
Well, I will save some slander for another day for those national insiders. So I will note that Tez Johnson late was wide open for a 66-yard touchdown. Baker unfortunately sailed it. Still went down there and got the game-winning field goal and everything, so it didn't cost him the game. But shout out to the pint-sized Oregon speedster for almost making a big play. Dwayne, not even a target for Cade Otton? Shocking.
Yeah. Well, hang on. I got this back with now all the weeks in it. But yeah, Cade Otton today was out there for 91% of the snaps, but he had a 0% target share. It was Sterling Shepard, man. Sterling Shepard was the other dude today. 18% target share. Mike Evans was at 29%, and then Emeka Egbuka was at 29%. Emeka Egbuka had a 35% targets per route run, like 70% route participation, but basically a target at one out of every 3 times the dude ran a route, he was getting a target.
It is fun seeing Shepard finally being healthy and, making some plays out there. So, I'm probably not going to be cracking our top 48, but he is slowly but surely rising up the old ranks. Over with those Jets, mentioned Tyrod Taylor. Again, spirited comeback effort. Obviously got help from the field goal block and everything, but wound up throwing for 197 yards and 2 touchdowns, chipped in 48 yards on the ground, proving that T-Mobile still got it a little bit. Did see a little more of a split backfield, though, Dwayne. Breece Hall still led the way, but not quite to the same extent as we saw in past weeks.
Yeah, but I mean, man, it's just so close from week to week. Like, I just don't think it's that big of a deal. I mean, he had 56% of the snaps, 60% of the rushing attempts today, 46% of the route participation. So Braylon Allen got a little bit more work today, 32% of the snaps and 40% of the rushing attempts. And he did actually average 5 yards per carry today. That's by far the best game we've had from Braylon Allen on the season. But like, if you look at it for the season, the problem is, like, outside of Garrett Wilson, like, there's just not a very stable asset for the Jets. So Breece Hall, 10.5 fantasy points per game, even though he's getting 60% of the snaps, 56% of the rushing attempts on the season, 67% of the snaps inside the 5. So it's not like, Braylon Allen's taking all that work. He's getting some of it. I think the real killer is a 42% route participation. It's like, come on, guys. Like, he's got a 17% target share. Let's put this guy on the field 65% of the pass plays, like, and see what happens. Like, what do you have to lose? You have Garrett Wilson and nothing else. Put Breece Hall on the field more often. I don't understand it. He is playing 57% of the 2-minute offense, but man, like, Hall is when you're watching him play, like, I still think he's such a good player. And if they would just play him on the pass downs, people would be a lot happier. But this offense, it's pretty much a train wreck. Tyrod Taylor did get there today, as the sicko call. The sicko call has gone 3 for 3 on quarterbacks. Not so well on some of the other positions, but Tyrod got there late.
Hell yeah, Tyrod. So again, Breece did drop 2 of his targets today, but Let him drop him. I don't want to see Arian Smith out there. Alan Lazard, I guess he caught a touchdown, so we'll save him some slander at least for this week. But it just is one of those things, Dwayne, where like, again, we usually have to do it for Justin Fields, but like you catch yourself looking at, a bad opening performance. Yeah, Jets had 6 points going into the fourth quarter. And I'm like, well, Tyrod must not be playing well. And then I'm also like, well, who is Tyrod even throwing the football to outside of Garrett Wilson? And again, I hate how teams continuously find themselves in these situations. The Jets have done it once again. That said, they do have Garrett Wilson. He caught 10 of 13 targets for 84 yards and a touchdown. Smooth 24.1 fantasy points. As we know, it's going to be tough to expect that in New York being with any level of consistency. But hey, it was a matchup against a pass funnel defense. As we talked about on our Thursday ranking show, good to see Garrett come through in a pretty big way. So Jets at the Dolphins on Monday Night Football, Dwayne. Man, it would be very Jets if that lets us down, but my God, there's no one in that secondary that can cover Garrett.
Yeah, I mean, Wilson right now, 18.6 fantasy points per game, almost a 100% route participation on the season. I mean, he never leaves the field. He's got a 39% target share. So, I mean, look, we knew he was going to get his looks, but we thought I can't project anyone at a 39%. I had him at like 28%, which is really high. But I mean, he's getting 40% of the targets right now. Honestly, like Justin Fields, like the Justin Fields experience is like, I feel like much more up and down. I'm not saying Tyrod Taylor is great, but like the Jets are just willing to throw the ball, I think, more when Tyrod Taylor is under center. They dropped back to pass 36 times today versus 23 rushing attempts. Yes, the game script had something to do with that, but we saw earlier in the year with Justin Fields under center is like, we don't care if we're trailing. We don't care if we're in a shootout. We're just going to keep running the football. And obviously Fields helps to make the run game go because the defense has to respect him so much. But yeah, Garrett Wilson playing really well.
Could see staring across the line of scrimmage from big old Vita Vea maybe dissuading you to run the ball too much as well. So get better soon, Justin. Did not practice at all last week. So again, maybe they just kind of anticipated that and said, we're going to have you sit out no matter what, but keep an eye on that again for next Monday night. Probably should be enough time though for Justin to get back under center. Moving on to the late afternoon, we had the Los Angeles Chargers take down the Broncos 23-20. Justin Herbert and company covered as 2.5-point faves. The under cashed of 45.5. Thanks to an 8-play, 43-yard drive with under 2 minutes left where Herbert set up the game-winning field goal from the artist known as Dicker the Kicker. So again, Herbert, as you mentioned earlier, Dwayne, like wasn't an easy going out here. Broncos offense really did put their best foot forward. Ultimately, though, had an amazing touchdown pass to Keenan Allen in the fourth quarter to go ahead and get them back in that thing. Did take 5 sacks, but ended up clawing his way up to 300 passing yards. So yeah, they'll have to face the Broncos one more time, but man, they are not going to have to face them next week. That will be the New York Football Giants. So certainly going to be expecting good things from this passing game. I just wish the passing game included a little bit more Ladd McConkey, Dwayne. I mean, this evidence is growing now of Quentin Johnston and Keenan Allen working ahead of our dear Ladd. Now, I don't think Ladd put forward one of the more efficient rookie seasons of the past decade by accident. This man is a very good receiver, but man, at a minimum, those rankings, I think it's time to really start scrunching up those, ranks. I mean, it's not fluky. Keenan and Quentin look good out there.
Yeah, I mean, the good news is you've got a pass-first offense with a really good quarterback, and they're channeling it all really through these 3 dudes, right? So I think what's going to happen, to your point, like there's going to be some bouncing around. I'll say this, like Keenan Allen's averaging, here's the season, 18.8 fantasy points per game, 79% route participation, leads the team with a 26% target share and 1.96 yards per route run. Quentin Johnston right behind him at 18.6 fantasy points per game, running more routes than Keenan Allen, 92%, 22% target share, and a 2.06 yards per route run. McConkey at 10.4 points per game, but 94% route participation, still number 1 on the team, 20% target share, just hasn't quite gone his way yet. Like McConkey's still going to have some massive games. He's going to have his games as well. But to your point, like they're spreading the ball around across all these guys. Again, the good news is it does look like this is an offense that's going to stick with being a pass-first operation. And so ultimately, I don't think it's ultimately going to kill you on McConkey. Are you going to get the potential ceiling of him being a guy that could average 22 fantasy points per game? That's probably not happening unless one of these other guys miss some time. But I still think that like he's a guy that obviously we want to have in our fantasy lineups. And I honestly, I would be trying to buy low on McConkey just because of how good the offense looks overall. And they're not throwing to their tight ends. I mean, Ronnie Gadsden, the second, was out there today. He had a 50% targets per route run, scored 9.6 fantasy points, but they only let him run a route 26% of the time. We had Will Disley out this week. So Conklin and Gadsden were the two guys splitting. The big story here, Ian, is Omarion Hampton. So we've got Najee Harris. We've got the Achilles injury. He's likely done for the season. Hampton scored 24.9 fantasy points per day today. And I get it. People are going to be like, oh man, he got the guys. Remember, part of the whole thesis on these guys, is people get hurt. This is what happens with running backs. But the bottom line is Hampton doesn't have a challenger now. We got Hassan Haskins is it. So they're going to have to go sign someone. They're obviously going to probably bring somebody up from the practice squad this week. But Hampton had 79% of the routes, or 79% of the snap share today, 70% of the rushing attempts, 100% of the work inside the 5. The big thing here, Ian, 15% target share. 15% target share for Omarion Hampton today. Played 100% of the 2-minute offense. So, he's going to be on the field. I don't think he's going to have 15% target share on the season because we just talked about those 3 wide receivers. That's where most of the targets are going to go. Those guys that we just named, what do they got? 48, 68%, 70% of the targets basically are going to those 3 guys. So it's going to be really hard for Hampton to probably be more than a 9, 10% guy. But kind of like what we talked about with Javonte Williams, if he's going to be out there, he's going to have these games where he has a chance, to potentially, make up for what he doesn't get to do on the ground by catching a couple of extra passes. And that's big for you in fantasy. But I think at this point, man, Omarion Hampton upgrades to borderline running back 1 territory, knowing that he doesn't have anyone else to deal with in this offense that is going to score a lot of freaking fantasy points this year.
Yeah, we were drafting Hampton as RB10 pretty much by the end of summer because we were so uncertain about Najee Harris playing. And now with, again, Harbaugh saying preliminary tests do indicate a torn Achilles, Najee Harris is out. Yeah, Omarion Hampton's looking at 20-plus touches a game. Hopefully he gets a little bit better with them. Again, I had him on that list earlier as running backs averaging 3.5 yards per carry. But, man, just pure volume being in such a great offense. This really is a situation not too dissimilar from Chase Brown last year. Of course, we just expect to see Hampton do bigger things with it because he does have that first-round draft capital, and we still do have plenty of reason to believe Hampton can, in fact, be quite good at football. So, yeah, man, rest of season, RB1, I would say don't even need to kind of put him outside the top 12. I put him right in there. Just does suck for Najee. Again, someone who did not miss a single game during the first 4 years of his career. Obviously went through so much stuff with the eye. I'm sure he saw all those memes and everything about it. Was coming on strong, looking good, and unfortunately will be out now for quite some time. So the only other running back right now on their active roster is Hassan Haskins, and he could take some of the early down short yards work, but man, he's not going to be touching that pass down stuff. And I still would even be surprised if he is taking any of the goal line work as well. Really is all wheels up for Hampton. Now, however he got there, he certainly is there now. Over with the Broncos, Dwain, they only had the ball for 23 minutes out there, but man, would have been a lot cooler if they did more with it. So Bo Nix did find Courtland Sutton for a nice 52-yard touchdown, pretty wide open. It was a cool play call from Sean Payton on a 4th and 2. Good to see Sutton bounce back with a $118 through the air, catching 6 of his 8 targets. But, ooh, buddy, Dwain, don't have the Sheesh report going, but I will still find some time to go ahead and highlight a few of them from Bo Nix because he missed Marvin Mims not once but twice on long potential touchdowns that, again, really seemed like he should have had every capability to make that throw. And then later, I don't know if it would have been a touchdown, but also did miss a deep ball to Courtland Sutton on a pass that, again, you just really would have liked to seen him make. So it was nice to see him get back up and throwing the ball downfield. He had such a low ADOT those first 2 weeks of the year. He was at 10.8 in this one. But, man, 3 straight performances now from Bo Nix. He's looking anything but like the, electric rookie that we saw for large portions of last year. Just again, between him, obviously McCarthy was the worst one that we saw out there, but I think Caleb's played better. I think Drake May's offered higher highs. Like obviously Jaden Daniels is Jaden Daniels. Very, very underwhelmed what we've seen from Bo Nix so far.
Yeah, and this is part of the reason we weren't down on Bo Nix like some people were. But this is why we weren't drafting him. We were actually giving the advice to don't draft him because you can get a very similar player in Drake May or Caleb Williams, and you can get them 2, 3, 4, 5 rounds later, depending on where you were drafting. Now, Bo Nix averaging 13.5 fantasy points per game. That's terrible. He's averaging 178 passing yards per game on the season. Touchdowns, not too bad. 1.7 touchdowns per game. So there's some room here. Like if you can get the yardage going, like they're actually scoring some touchdowns, and he's got 23.7 rushing yards per game. He's getting 11% of their design rushing attempts, and he's got an 8% scramble rate. So he's going to do his thing on the ground. He's going to give you 2.5 to 3.5 fantasy points just on the ground alone every week. And if he scores a touchdown, it's going to be more than that. So I don't think it's complete panic mode, but I agree with you. I think at this point, he does have to get moved down outside of probably the top 12 quarterbacks, given that we've got Daniel Jones playing the way he is, Caleb Williams playing the way he is, Drake May playing the way he is. Kind of in a similar bucket to like Kyler Murray right now. Kyler obviously has a little bit bigger rushing upside, but I still think that I like the Broncos offense overall a little bit better.
Dwain and I both have Bo as QB 14 ahead of this matchup. That was a tough one. And I think that was why he was outside of our top 12 more than anything. But again, it wasn't like that we just saw, oh, no one open again. That sucks under pressure. Again, bad miss throws out there. I'm sure that those could be some fun film sessions between Bo and Coach Sean Payton. Again, mentioned Sutton, obviously having the big day. Dwain, did we see Troy Franklin still have that full-time role after his big first couple of weeks? Okay.
Yeah, don't drop Troy Franklin, guys. 94% route participation today. He actually, Sutton was at 100%, so he was second on the team. He was the wide receiver too, even though Mims had, you saw Mims on the screen getting those near misses. Yes, we wish he would have caught those touchdowns. He had a 17% target share. It just didn't work out for him today. So 50% of his targets today came on screen looks, 72% from the slot. So like he's the guy they're getting inside. They're scheming him up. You're going to get better days from Troy Franklin. Eventually, it'll be interesting to see like if Evan Ingram ever gets fully healthy, like does that potentially impact, Franklin, because they both work inside. But right now, I mean, we got a second-year player, didn't come through in the fantasy box score. So if you do see someone from your league drop him, Troy Franklin is a name I still really like, averaging 11.7 fantasy points per game so far this year, Ian, with a 21% target share.
Ingram did not practice all of last week with that back injury, so wouldn't be very surprising at all to, again, see him sidelined ahead of this Broncos-Bengals Monday night clash. Quickly on the backfield, Dwain, once again, J.K. Dobbins leading it, and it did seem like that Tyler Bidet was the odd man out. However, as I saw you tweeting, unfortunately, wasn't like Harvey actually got that leftover work.
Yeah, Tyler Bidet he was active, but he didn't play. He played like 2% of the snaps today, and it all went to Dobbins. So here are Dobbins' snaps over the first two games, and then I'll just go 1, 2, 3. So week 3 will be the final on each one of these data points I give you. 52% snaps, 46% snaps. Today, 69%. So he took those snaps from Bidet. And then rushing attempts, 62%, 64, 73% of the design rushing attempts today for the Broncos. And this was the bigger one, route participation, 30%, 31%, 56% today. Target share has gone from 5 to 7 to 9%. 2-minute offense has gone from 33 to 31 to 71%. So also, Ian, like, man, dude, 14.8, 15.5, and 15.3 PPR points per game. Like he's just locked in as a running back 2 right now. Like J.K. Dobbins, he's playing well. He played well last year. But seeing, and this actually matches what we heard from the preseason reports. Benjamin Albright, was reporting that, look, Dobbins is going to be the guy out there in the 2-minute offense. He's going to be the guy out there on passing downs. Maybe he was still acclimating to the offense. I don't know. We can never trust Sean Payton. So he could go right back to using Tyler Bidet next week. But the main takeaway here is this is a positive indicator for Dobbins. I'm not going to necessarily upgrade him because of this. I just think he's locked into the running back 2 conversation because he's already been doing it. But if he does this again next week, he might deserve an upgrade. The other thing here is just, pour one out for now anyway. For RJ Harvey, you would have thought that if like Tyler Bidet wasn't going to be on the field, that it would be RJ Harvey, but it wasn't. His route participation, all 3 games, 33, 31, and 31%.
Yeah, that hurts.
You just sit there, you just go, just like nothing to say. There's nothing we can say. Just keep RJ Harvey on your bench is all you could do.
It's just unfortunate, man. We got to take these situations as they come. You can say, I should have expected the rookie running back to go seize the role. Well, we see Cam Scatterbo and some other guys starting to do just that. So again, obviously sucks for anyone to use that high pick on Harvey. Keep him for now, but certainly cannot be starting him. But man, J.K. Dobbins, 75 of his 83 rushing yards came after contact. His touchdown, I believe if I saw it right, it was almost like kind of a swing pass that ended up going backwards. And man, the fact that he managed to stay in bounds like 4 separate times while tight roping the sideline really was quite the feat there for Dobbins. Dobbins. So continuing to do big things, man. Heck of a comeback story in the grand scheme of things, all the injuries that he has been through. Moving on, the Seahawks took down the Saints 44-13, keeping Ian's survivor pool alive. Hell yeah. Seahawks covered as 7.5-point faves, over cash here 41.5. Seahawks got that done all by themselves. This one was 38-6 Seahawks at halftime. So again, just another really good performance in this Clint Kubiak revenge game. Sam Darnold, Dwain, continuing to look much, much more like 2024 Sam Darnold as opposed to 2018 through 2023 Sam Darnold. 218 yards, 2 touchdowns on just 14 of 18 passing. Got JSN over 100 yards as it's become, 96 yards and a touchdown. Still a fantastic game. Fantastic games. That's what's becoming a weekly occurrence here. Torrey Horton as well caught a beautiful fade for a touchdown. Also, how's the punt return? Not getting too much going from Cooper Kupp, but man, Dwayne, this passing game looking really freaking good out here.
Yeah, and I mean they were not pressed at all. Like they absolutely blew the wheels off, of the Saints today. So yeah, it's a scenario like right now looking at it, you talked about Darnold, the efficiency is the key. Only 221 yards passing per game, which is still above the NFL average over the last 3 years of 215. But again, not getting pressed in this game script, he's averaging 9 yards per attempt. 70% completion percentage for Sam Darnold on the season, averaging 1.3 passing touchdowns per game. So we get in some skips into some skips. Yeah, some skips would be really great. But if we get into some scripts where you're actually pushed to throw the ball a little bit more, because we know Clint Kubiak wants to be more of this balanced offense, potentially even leaning more to being like a run heavy offense when he can. But JSN, to your point, still getting there. So far right now this year, JSN 20.6 fantasy points per game, 30% target share. For some reason, the route participation and snap data is not coming through yet on this game.
I noticed that. It's weird. So
yeah, I don't know what's up with it. But 30% targets. That's good. Cooper Kupp had a 15% target share. And like you mentioned, Torrey Horton, 18.2 fantasy points today, 20% target share, made a play on special teams, also caught a touchdown.
Yeah, that 95-yard punt return was absolutely sick. He's, continuing to be one of these guys who capitalized on some pretty well-deserved training camp hype, as it turns out. So, yeah, man, Darnold was PFF's number 3 highest graded passer coming into this week. I did not expect that to be going anywhere. Really, again, he got strip sacked by Nick Bosa at the end of that week 1 game. Otherwise, you really could not have asked for a better, first couple weeks there in Seattle. So great stuff from Darnold. Good stuff from Kenneth Walker. Turned 16 carries into 38 yards, but did get lucky and, scored 2 goal line touchdowns. He did have 32 yards wiped away on 2 runs that holding penalties, but I don't know. As much as I do love me some beyond the box score stuff, like the holds very well just could have made those gains happen in the first place. So, man, Dwayne, again, clearly the number 1 back without Zach Charbonnet out there. We did still see some George Halani. I know it might be tough to get those splits with our, back-end data acting up a little bit for the time being, but it's just not the sort of performance I was hoping to see from Walker when he's still stuck in this committee with Charbonnet seemingly once he gets back. All right, I would have loved to see, another high-efficiency, great game like he had in week 2. Again, huge win. I'm sure the Seahawks aren't throwing too big of a, hissy fit about it, but just left me wanting a little more.
No one wants a hissy fit, Hartitz. 89% of the rushing attempts in quarters 1 through 3 before he basically started resting. So, guys, that's a pretty good proxy for. He just got all the work until the game was so far out of hand that they let George Halani come in and really mop things up. But just agree with you overall, like if you are a Kenneth Walker manager, what you were hoping for was like a 6 yards per carry performance where it just basically you had a chance to potentially ice it and get the coaches to be like, okay, we just got to have this guy here. He didn't do that today. I mean, Kenneth Walker was below average today. Now, again, like you said, offensive line, all these different things, but you would think in a game where you're just having your way and you can do whatever you want, like it would be better. But I will say sometimes you get in these kind of game scripts where you're so far ahead, the defense knows you're just going to run. And it does actually drive down your yards per carry because they will start stacking the box. And then ultimately, what does that do? That allows you to hit the plays down the field, which we did see from Sam Darnold.
In typical Kenneth Walker fashion, he did have a few like negative or short runs where he was still making
try to hurdle a dude
back there.
So, try to hurdle a dude with 2 more guys behind him. I'm like, Kenneth, no. Like you hurdle a dude when there's no one else behind them. He saw a dude with two more dudes coming and did the hurdle, and I was like, oh God.
And again, I fully think he should be getting the featured role, but we just saw in the
too.
first 2 weeks that he's not when Zach Charbonnet is healthy. So guess what? We're going to be ranking him inside the top 12 for as long as Charbonnet is out, and vice versa will be true as well. We'll see what happens. Charbonnet did not practice at all last week, though. So it's going to be Seahawks at the Cardinals on Thursday Night Football. Quick turnaround could be a good position there for Walker to, again, continue keeping a hold on that backfield. Over with the Saints, again, was a bit of a step back here from Spencer Rattler and company. They had 3 straight games under Rattler where it came down to the final drive. As you can, again, tell from the 44-13 final, this one did not. So just 218 yards, 1 touchdown, 1 pick on 28 of 39 passing for Rattler. He is force-feeding Chris Olave and Juwan Johnson the ball, Dwain. That really is all we can ask. 10 catches for 57 yards for Olave, 6 for 51 for Jawan Jesus, the chosen Jawan out here. So it was good to see that. Didn't get a huge game out of Rashid Shaheed, but again, we knew these down games were going to be here. It's cool that even in down games, we got 15.7 PPR points from Olave and 11.1 from Juwan Jesus. Dwain, I would have expected a lot lower if you would have asked me a couple weeks ago.
Yeah, and I don't really have anything to add other than 34% target share for Olave today and continues to work from the slot 44% of the time. And so even though you may be having a little bit of a quarterback challenge when you're getting these inside looks, you're getting a little bit of a lower average depth of target. What does that do? That increases your catchable target rate. That then increases your catches. And in a PPR league or a half PPR, that does come in really handy. And obviously, we know that Olave is a really good player. So feeling pretty good, honestly, about him as like just locked into the wide receiver 3, and you know he can give you a wide receiver 2, and he's going to eventually pop for a wide receiver 1 performance. But he's just a steady dude, you know, that's in a role that like has a decent floor for how bad this offense is. I think that's the key. And knowing that Juwan Jesus is also getting his targets. Yeah. So I think it's interesting how strong the floor for Olave. And it's not like the floor has been like 15 points or something, but he hasn't given you a complete dud.
NFL high, 37 targets this season for Chris Olave. Juwan Johnson isn't that far behind, though, at 28th. That is tied for 9th, regardless of position. Only Jake Ferguson has more among tight ends. So, going to continue ranking Juwan Johnson awfully high. Olave, again, maybe we move him up a little bit in the wide receiver 3 range. Does he even qualify as a buy low, Dwain? Because I feel like, you know, we've just kind of been treating him as this wide receiver 3, and he still kind of is. Like, yeah, he can make more with it, but he's a volume-based wide receiver 3, and that's cool.
Yeah, I mean, we'll see what the utilization score says on him versus like his fantasy points. Like that's typically how I go about it. And then I look at fantasycalc.com to like see like what kind of trades are going on. My guess is Olave's probably pretty fairly valued right now. And the challenge is like, as much as we like him, we just said all these positive things about him. He's still a wide receiver 3 to your point, and we've got systemic like offensive problems because we can't figure out what the quarterback situation. There's not a path, in my opinion, to like suddenly turning into, you know, a 280 yard per game offense. Which who is like this day? Well, besides the Colts, you know, it's really tough to throw for that many yards today in the NFL. So yeah. We'll have to see what the utilization says, but I'm probably with you. I doubt that he is a buy low.
3 games left, ladies and mostly gentlemen. We had the Bears beat down the Cowboys at Soldier Field, 31-14. Bears came in as 1.5-point home dogs. That wound up being misguided. The under did cash, though, unfortunately, in this expected shootout at 50.5. So Caleb Williams, 298 yards and 4 touchdowns on 19 of 28 passing. And for the first time in his young career, Dwain did not take a single sack out there. The Cowboys have this thing going on defense where they can't really pressure opposing quarterbacks, and they also can't really cover wide receivers. So it creates this, you know, kind of conundrum where offense has just got to kind of try to figure out what wide open player to throw the ball to. I'm sure it's very frustrating. So yeah, man, complete dime, 62.1 yards in the air on the bomb to Luther Burden on the flea flicker per Ben Solak. That was the farthest traveling completed pass of the season per next gen stats. So again, the flashes are insane. The flashes have always been insane. He had the cool laser touchdown to Roma Dunze as well. But Dwain, I'm just not sure right now if this is Caleb Williams and Ben Johnson meshing and taking that next step, or if this is Caleb taking advantage of a defense that made Russell Wilson look like Superman 7 days ago. Again, we saw some really fun flashes from Caleb. It was like weeks 4 through 6 last year. He was one of the highest graded passers. He was dominating bad defenses, and that's exactly what the Bears did today. I'm just not so sure if we saw anything that makes us say like, oh, this is the switch. This switch got flipped right now. The fantasy stuff's great. The fantasy stuff was great before today, but did you see something today that just made you say, oh man, Caleb is now finally figuring it out?
I mean, I think it's certainly a positive.
Yeah.
It's to your point. Like anytime we have a small sample like this, people will want to point to the things you said. Oh, see, the Ben Johnson offense is finally taking hold, and maybe it is. Maybe it is finally taking hold. There is a chance that it is that. But like you said, all I know is Russell Wilson threw for 450 yards on this defense last week. Okay. Russell Wilson, like that's more than he's going to throw for in most 2-game stretches this season. Okay. So the Cowboys defense is absolutely terrible. Trevon Diggs got roasted by Rome Odunze on that route. Like,
you see him afterwards, like, that's on me. We know, man. The entire stadium knows it's on you.
We know, Trayvon. Yeah. So, look, I think the big thing is what you already said. The fantasy points have already been there for Caleb Williams. And if we know that he can occasionally still have these boom games, and now the floor is better because of what we've seen, mostly because of his legs, to be honest, in the first 2 games. Today, like he was out there, he had 5 rushing attempts. It was only 12 yards, but he's getting design run attempts now. He's getting design stuff. He's got the scramble stuff going. So for the year, averaging 23.4 fantasy points per game, Mr. Caleb Williams, with 238 passing yards per game. Here's the big other thing, Ian. It's kind of like Baker. Even though the passing yards haven't been there, 2.3 passing touchdowns per game. Now, I know he had 4 today, but I think overall it's encouraging signs, and just knowing that he's rushing for 32 yards per game right now, 0.33 rushing touchdowns per game. He's just kind of got like, a little bit of everything in his bag. Maybe he can't like hit like everything in his golf bag, but it's like he's got a 7-iron, he's got a driver, like the putter occasionally work. Like he has 3 or 4 good clubs that he can go to. He may not be the complete product yet, but I mean, I think we just have to be very encouraged. And if this is him starting to gel in this offense, that man, like the sky could be the limit. I'm with you though. Like we don't know. All I'll say is like the fantasy points have already been there. And if this is the new ceiling, like sign me up.
His mobility and arm talent, again, allow him to just make a couple throws per game that barely anyone else on this planet can make. So if he can just figure out some of these,
it's like Mahomes and Josh Allen. He makes certain plays that look like them.
And then he'll airmail 3 or 4 wide open guys per game. And it's like, come on, bro. Or he'll take these ill-advised sacks, which he didn't do today. Again, to his credit, is still a young quarterback. He didn't get to spend, 6 years in college like some of these other guys. It would make sense if we are starting to see things go again ahead, just trying to be a little bit, cautious. But man, maybe not, Dwain, because I'm looking at the Bears schedule right now. They get the Raiders next week, which again is a group that's been stingier against the run than the pass. Raiders, Commanders, and Saints before maybe we have a test against the Ravens there. But even then, we've seen them be had a little bit as well. So good vibes going on for the Bears. Did we see a change in usage though for Luther Burden, Dwain? Because again, 101 yards on 3 targets. It did seem like he was mostly out there for kind of design plays though.
Yeah, it was mostly design stuff. He had a 33% targets per route run. So like when they had him out there, they wanted to get him the ball. 31% route participation. So that's not enough yet, but obviously like when you come through with plays like that, there's a chance for you to get rewarded with more. It doesn't always mean that, but Olamide Zaccheaus, he's done a nice job, but like he's a veteran that's been around a long time. So I think, this could be the start of something with Luther Burden. I know that even like in the FFPC, real-time sports, some of these other leagues, I saw Luther Burden dropped a couple of times by teams last week. Cause I try to always go through and look at see who we get. But the other thing I'm usually looking at is like, see what players were getting dropped for the week. Luther Burden's name was out there like you and I, but across all of our real-time sports teams. And then I have across FFPC, probably like 25 mid to high stake teams. And I want to say I saw his name 4 or 5 times. And those are leagues where we got 12 teams, guys, and you're drafting 20 rounds. So he's going to be out there in some of these gross leagues. I think he's definitely worth picking up as a guy that could come on down the stretch as a playmaker, for the team.
Mentioned the Odunze touchdown. Almost had 2. I didn't see the slow-mo, and it was, a fastball from Caleb, but it sure seemed like he had a chance to catch a short 11-yard touchdown. Little case of the dropsies, though. But man, just Rome really taking over as the wide receiver 1 in Chicago, creeping up towards being a wide receiver 1 in Fantasyland as well. Unfortunately, Dwain.
20.9 fantasy points per game this year.
Whew. Nice.
28% target share, dude. Playing from the slot, 2.12 yards per route run. That's not elite. That's really good, though. Like anything 2 and above is good. But I'm with you. Like, I mean, I'm I do it in steps. Like I'd already been ranking him as a mid-range wide receiver too. So now I'm going to bump him up like to that. And who knows, the right matchup. You just talked about the matchups. Hell, he's probably in our top 12 with the matchups that we have coming up here on Roma Dunze. If not, he'll be just outside of it.
I mean, I'm just looking at it right now. This last week, I had him wide receiver 19, which means starting, heavy majority of lineups, but I'm going to move him ahead of Ladd, BTJ, Mike Evans is hurt, probably Drake London. I mean, there is room to go up there. Dwayne's even ahead of me already. So DJ Moore did score a touchdown. Again, it was wide open, though, just like Cole Kmet's. That's why, again, just trying to say maybe take this game a little bit with a, grain of salt. Just consider the context. Will note, though, that unfortunately Colson Loveland left early with a hip injury. Seemed like they were trying to get him going early. He had 3 targets, caught one of them for 31 yards. So, yeah, Cole Kmet, the sicko call of the week, if I'm not mistaken.
Caught a touchdown to save it.
Found his way into the end zone. And, hey, man, like we've seen big performances from him. If Colson Loveland is going to be out and we have Cole Kmet on a legit, every down snap rate, like he is going to be approaching that tight end 12 spot on a weekly basis. So great stuff from the Bears. Good to see you guys get that win. Just annoyed that now my college friend gets to hold this over me for who knows how long, but whatever, Dwayne. With the Cowboys, sad performance, 251 yards, touchdown and 2 picks for Dak. 1 pick went off George Pickens' hands. The other one was on 4th and goal, so I'm not going to exactly say they were horrible INTs or anything, but yeah, man, the offense seemed like they were moving the ball up and down the field, but the Bears really made the most out of all their opportunities, and the Cowboys really stalled out for the most part once they got down close. We did have a nice one-handed touchdown catch, as to say, by George Pickens, who, Dwayne, has gone 5 catches, 68 yards, and 1 touchdown on 9 targets exactly in back-to-back weeks. That is freaking crazy. I don't know what it means, but man, that is crazy. Unfortunately, though, he was being leaned on because we cannot have nice things, and CeeDee Lamb suffered an ankle injury very early on a rush attempt. We did hear that from CeeDee himself that he, quote, absolutely feels like he can play in week 4. I don't know, a lot of adrenaline going on. Wasn't able to play, this week. Obviously, team doctor said the injury is not as serious as it could have been. So obviously sucks. We hope CD is going to be back sooner rather than later, again, for that Sunday night game against the Packers. Pickens is going to be getting a nice boost up, obviously, Dwayne, if CD's missing time. That said, I don't know if I'd be looking to put him in the top 12, but he would become, a top 16, top 18. Like, you should start this guy.
Yeah. 21% target share today, but he didn't play. They took the starters off the field late in the game. So he had a 22.5% targets per route run. That's probably the more important number in this one. So again, kind of like Metcalf, like at this point, do we just say that George Pickens, like, until he really proves it, like, can we say he's going to be a wide receiver 1? Probably not, but I don't see a way to have him outside your top 24 if we know we're not going to have CeeDee Lamb. The other guy that gets a bump here is Jake Ferguson, dude. 48% targets per route run today. Like, that's absolutely nuts. 32% target share for Mr. Ferguson. So we would probably have most of the targets funneling through those 2 guys. For you guys that play in these leagues like Ian, where you start 30, you got 32 league mates, 89% route participation for Jalen Tolbert. So he really stepped in for Lamb. Didn't do a ton, 14% target share. He's going to be running routes. Then the next guy was really Kevontae Turpin with a 70% route participation. Only 7% targets, took a rough hit later in the game. He's a little slow to get up from, but came back in and hit one of those deep crossers on one of those late things from Dak. I will say with Dak, just real quick, like kind of recapping where we're at on the year with him, it's getting a little bit concerning. It's like you said, like the yards are there. So I want to think that like eventually the touchdowns will be there for Dak, but man, he's averaging 14 fantasy points per game right now, despite throwing for 267 yards. So I'm kind of conflicted on how to feel about it, because typically if you're throwing for that many yards, you're going to throw for more than those touchdowns. So I tend to think that Dak is going to turn it around from a fantasy perspective this year. And we just know that this defense can't stop anybody. So they're going to have to keep throwing. Probably I lean towards Dak being, someone that, like, definitely if he gets dropped for some reason, I don't think anybody's going to drop him because the Cowboys are throwing so much, but he could be a sneaky buy low. The problem is there's so many other quarterbacks performing well that we've talked about that I'm already ranking ahead of Dak. And so anyway, I guess I would just say, I think you're going to get better things from Dak the rest of the way, but it's been a little disappointing to throw as much as they have to only average 14 fantasy points per game.
And we're not really getting much if any of a rushing floor from Dak at this point of his
Nothing.
career
Not
after
doing
how many,
anything.
bad
Yeah.
injuries at this point. So you mentioned him, and Jake Ferguson caught 13 of 14 targets for 82 yards. He's now gone, though, Dwayne, 120 targets since his last receiving touchdown. This man is beyond due. Hopefully, hey, he's facing the right opponent, though. Last time, I believe
Seam
he
routes
faced
coming in.
Hey, he faced the Packers. The last time he scored a touchdown was against those Packers when you were there, man. And Jerry World caught 3 of them in that one. So maybe that's all he needs. Either way, though, 30 targets now on the season. That's the 5th most of any player and the most among tight ends. So really the only other big story here was Javonte Williams continuing to do his thing and
Yep.
dominate this backfield trade. Looked, I thought the best he has all season. I know it was the Bears, but man, it just felt like every single touch he got, he was carrying dudes an extra couple yards, breaking tackles. Unfortunately, lost that fumble early, just got ripped out of his hands on the sideline. But hey, still forced 6 missed tackles. And if he wasn't stopped at the 1-yard line late, would have accounted for a touchdown. So I think he was our consensus RB14 going into this one, Dwayne. Maybe with the Packers matchup not being ideal, we bump him down a tad, but he's still going to
It's gonna
be
be
a
hard to,
recommended
though.
star as an RB2. Yeah.
Yeah, it's going to be hard to. We'll see what the team totals look like this week. I think Vegas is probably still going to be in on the Cowboys, and we'll see what it looks like. Micah Parsons obviously going to be looking to do his thing, but the bottom line on Williams is today, before the game was out of hand. So if we just look at quarters 1 through 3, he had 70% of the snaps, which is right where he's been for the year. He's sitting at a 70% snap share, 63% of the rushing attempts. Miles Sanders did work in a little bit, and maybe some of that was due to the fumble, but that's one of those where Javonte honestly thought he was past the defense. The guy came in behind him, made
Yeah.
a really good play, but I'm with you. Javonte Williams has looked better every game.
He
Like
even had the ball into the right arm. Like he had the
yeah.
ball in the sideline arm, but the guy came from the sideline. It was just a really good play, I think.
Yeah, I mean, he had it tucked and everything. It's just a good play by defense. Bottom line, he's averaging 19.2 fantasy points per game. Right now it looks like he has complete hold of this backfield. So yeah, Javonte Williams might be a small downgrade this week, but he's a running back too, for sure.
2 more here on the Fantasy Life Show. We appreciate you guys sticking with us. If you want to throw us a like, subscribe, maybe even a good rating, we always appreciate that as well. But anyways, the 49ers took down the Cardinals 16-15. Arizona did cover as 1.5-point dogs. The under cash of 44.5. 10-play, 63-yard drive from Mac Jones ultimately set up the game-winning field goal after a safety put them down with just 3:15 remaining. So really no excuses, in my opinion, from Kyler Murray and the Cardinals. Marvin Harrison Jr. didn't exactly help matters. We'll talk about him in a little bit, but winners write the history books. That said, Dwayne, don't think there's too much to go on here with the 49ers. We are expecting Brock Purdy to be back next week. Seemed like he was pretty close in this one. Kudos to Mac Jones for proving capable of working the Kyle Shanahan offense in the meantime, and a big part of that is force feeding the football to Christian McCaffrey. 17 rush attempts, 15 targets out there. He is now tied for the 3rd highest target earner in the NFL, regardless of positions. Unfortunately, it wasn't a bigger day because he was stopped at the 1-yard line 3 times and did not score a touchdown on the same drive. 2 of those were on one drive, so best case he could have scored 2 touchdowns. But yeah, say it with me, everybody. Sheesh. Ricky Pearsall, 117 yards on 11 targets because no George Kittle, no Jawan Jennings, no Demarcus Robinson, no pretty much anyone other than Kendrick Bourne out here. So Pearsall is going to go off as long as every other wide receiver is banged up. And to his credit, he looked good out there. Awesome over-the-shoulder catch. But yeah, I mean, hey, there's no one else to get the ball to. CMC is the man. You got anything on the 49ers win?
Yeah. So just quickly on the 2 things you hit on, CMC averaging 23.3 fantasy points per game this season, 81% of the snaps, doesn't leave the field, 29% target share as a running back. Obviously, that's also because we don't have Kittle, don't have any of the other guys back. But hat tip to Ricky Pearsall, because it's not all just schemed up stuff. He is doing it, getting down the field, 14.8 average depth of target today. Did not leave the field, 29% target share. 2.79 yards per route run. So on the season now, Ricky Pearsall's at 14.6 fantasy points per game with a 22% target share. He's accounted for 50% of their air yards on the season, and he's averaging 2.4 yards per route run. So look, that's a step forward for him, because honestly, up until this game, like, he had done some things with the yards per route run, but was just living on a few deep catches. So seeing him come through and at least post the 29% target share, like, that's a positive for me, because we haven't seen that yet. We've not seen him really dominate. We saw him do a little bit at the end of last year, but expected more from him early this year. So I think that's a positive sign for him. Obviously, like you said, as the offense gets healthy, some of those will go away, but still a positive step for a young player.
Mentioned a previous recap, but yes, Nick Bosa dealing with a knee injury. Kyle Shanahan said the initial physical test didn't indicate an ACL. Don't know more tomorrow, but man, losing Nick Bosa is not going to make life easy for this 49ers defense. Again, in terms of EPA allowed per play, really hasn't put in their best step forward early on in this year. Straight the schedule hasn't been great, but again, it doesn't exactly get a whole lot better. Hopefully, Nick Bosa is
And
helping
man,
keep those DST.
The one other thing I would say is they're throwing the ball. 41 pass attempts today and 20 rushing attempts in a game that they won by 1 point. So they've been throwing the ball more this season. So I think that's the other thing to pay attention to here with the 49ers. And if we don't have Nick Bosa and you have a defense that's giving up even more points, like it could really help keep that going. So that could be a big positive for Brock Purdy, especially as they get healthy. You eventually get Ayuk back, you get Kittle back. Just getting Juwan Jennings back, hopefully this next week. In 4 or 5 weeks, man, we could be feeling pretty good about the 49ers offense.
Get healthy, boys. Get healthy. Maybe they can start running the ball then, man. 5th worst team yards per carry mark this year. Has not been easy sledding on the ground. Over to the Cardinals, Kyler, $159 through the air, 1 touchdown to Trey McBride in the red zone, no less. How about them apples? McBride caught 5 of 8 targets for 43 yards. Marvin Harrison Jr. only caught 3 of 6 targets for 44 yards. And my God, guys, this should have been a huge day. First one, it was thrown a little bit behind him, but he was so wide open that Kyler just didn't want to miss him. So I'm not going to blame it on Kyler by any stretch. Should have been a 30-yard gain. I think when we see the all 22, we're going to see that it probably could have been a 75-yard touchdown. It really just was a deep crosser. He got lost in coverage. Sucks. Then there's another one in the end zone that, yeah, he had to extend for it. Maybe even it was a small dive, but Dwain, you're Marvin Harrison Jr., the 4th overall pick, your team's number 1 wide receiver. If people were calling that Tyreek Hill a drop on Thursday Night Football, then this was 5 times worse than that, man. It was in the breadbasket for Marv. Did not come down with it. Did get a DPI. I thought it was actually charged to the other guy that was in the end zone. What I saw in True Media said it was, in fact, charged to Marv. So should have had an extra 75-yard touchdown and a 34-yard touchdown. And again, I don't think I'm really going out of my way to say either of those things. So it sucks. I'd like to think he'll catch them, but man, it's not like we have too many opportunities like this, Dwain, to exactly let fall through our fingertips. So boomer bust, wide receiver 3, already kind of been ranking him as that. Going to be tough to change anything.
Maybe boomer bust, wide receiver 4. He's averaging 10.1 fantasy points per game, 19% target share, 1.39 yards per route run. I mean, I'm just that's what he was last year, and that's what he has been to this point this year. I mean, I'm with you. I want to believe in Mazda Marv, but
it's just so sad.
It is sad. It is. And to your point, it could have been a much bigger day. So that's why we need to bring the Sheesh report back. Yeah. So I have something to look at like this to make me feel better about Marv.
Don't talk to me about it. James Conner, unfortunately, guys, bad lower body injury. He's going to be out the rest of the season, undergoing ankle surgery. Do not watch the replay if you have not already. Was running so hard, man. Already had a couple really good gains. Obviously has such a fantastic career. Hopefully he does get better and continues to go on about that. Hate to see any of these injuries. And because we are sick loser fantasy people, we now immediately got to talk about the ramifications, which is Trey Benson. Dwain, not expecting him to be available on many waiver wires throughout the industry, but we'll just say again, like we've kind of been talking about his backup role, James Conner, his last few weeks, already taken over the pass down work. I don't think Amari DiMercado did himself any favors by dropping what probably would have been a 9-yard touchdown. So Trey Benson, man, if we're sitting here a week from now saying, oh man, he played 85% of the snaps with 25 touches, I wouldn't be surprised.
Yeah, man. I think we immediately have to upgrade Trey Benson to mid-range running back 2 territory. I mean, after the injury to James Conner, 87% of the snaps, 71% of the rushing attempts, 50% route participation, and he's already got a 13% target share on the season. I mean, so he's shown us that he can do something in his game that we didn't necessarily know was there. If Marv doesn't take a step forward in his game and it's really just Trey McBride, and then Marv is really performing, like you said, more like a wide receiver 3 or, like I said, a wide receiver 4, somewhere in that range, there's room to target this guy in the offense, man. So Trey Benson, like, absolutely. I know that last week, I'm looking right now to see if I can look at the rostership percentage. Like, the easiest way to do it is when I go to Yahoo, like sort on the ads. And you guys that are in these leagues, how you're letting people add like in the game, like that's crazy. That means somebody has to be tethered to their TV all day, but whatever. Hey, you guys, you set your rules up and you guys, I assume, vote on it all. But I know last week, I want to say Trey Benson and Yahoo was under 50% rostered. So he's going to be on some of your waiver wires. Some of you I know, not in my league, pal. I get it. And the leagues Ian and I are playing in, not available, but he's going to be available in some of your leagues, and he is going to be worth. He's the biggest free agent so far this free season. This season.
Empty the clip.
Empty the clip. Yep, all of it.
And I think that about does it on that one. Takes us to our Sunday night game. It is time for our DraftKings closing lines. I've teamed up with DraftKings Sportsbook to bring you the ultimate way to kick off this NFL season. Right now, new customers who bet just $5 will get $200 instantly in bonus bets and $200 off NFL Sunday Ticket from YouTube. That's right. New customers bet $5, get $200 in bonus bets plus $200 off NFL Sunday Ticket. Just download the DraftKings Sportsbook app and sign up using the promo code FANTASYLIFE. The crown is yours. Stack your bonus bets on same-game parlays, money line spreads, and more, or ride the momentum with live betting that makes every snap count. So here's your play. Download DraftKings Sportsbook, sign up with promo code FANTASYLIFE, bet just $5 and you'll get $200 in bonus bets instantly, plus $200 off NFL Sunday Ticket from YouTube. Thanks to DraftKings Sportsbook for sponsoring this. Let's make this NFL season one to remember. The Chiefs took down the New York Football Giants 22-9. Casey did cover as 6-point faves. The under cash here at 44.5. So still a relatively lackluster performance. Chiefs didn't score a first half touchdown, ended up getting 9 points. They had like a 60-yard defensive pass interference penalty against Marquise Brown to kind of get down there at the end. But, we're able to scrape together some drives. And Tyquan Thornton, Dwain, ends up, looking like really the best wide receiver on this team for second or third straight weeks, depending on how you thought about, Marquise Brown's opening there week one, where he had like 15 targets. But again, a situation where just a few more weeks for Rashee Rice to be back. And it does sound like Xavier Worthy could be there for week 4. But man, right now, particularly with the team high 9 targets, Tyquan Thornton, he's probably the guy I want to start most in week 4.
Yeah, so over the last 3 games, his route participation has been right around 80. Well, it's at 80% for the season. He was at 78% today. His target share has gone from week 1, 11% to 17% in week 2 to 26% today. So a 28% target share in this game by far. This is the best Tyquan Thornton has ever looked in his career, and he's a good match with Mahomes. Mahomes hits him deep, play gets called back, he turns around and goes right back to him. On the next play, basically in the same spot of the field. So 18.1 fantasy points today, 13.9 last week. To your point, could be short-lived, get Xavier Worthy back, but I'll say this, Xavier Worthy didn't necessarily show over the whole course of last year to be like this lid lifter, right? He was really more a guy used underneath. So Tyquan Thornton at a minimum, could help the Chiefs still. Even as they get healthy, a guy they can mix in that can still push the vertical boundary of the field and open things up for some of these other guys who honestly are just really struggling. I mean, Marquise Brown, since that first game against the Chargers, has not really been worth even, you don't even want him in your fantasy lineup right now. I mean, we're talking about a guy that came out and scored 8.6 fantasy points today, I think it was. I'm clicking back over, 8.2. So he had a 17% target share, and even he's rotating off the field. You think Marquise Brown, with all these guys they've got injured, would be at like a 95% route participation. He's at 81%. So yeah, Tyquan, don't know how long it'll last, but definitely the one bright spot. The rushing attack, same thing we've seen, Ian. 44% of the attempts to Hunt, 44% of the attempts to Isaiah Pacheco, 58% of the Pacheco's still the leader from a snap share standpoint, 58%. But inside the 5, Hunt got those looks today, and he punched one of those in for the touchdown. That's how he ended up with 11.4 fantasy points. I really don't want to touch this backfield. Brashard Smith, 9% of the rushing attempts, still only a 10% snap share. I get it. You guys are playing in some gross leagues. He might remain the stash because nobody's running away with this backfield, but just a pretty gross situation overall.
There's a funny note from Collinsworth where he said he was talking to Andy Reid, kind of trying to hype up Rashard Smith, like, "Oh, hey, you think you might try to get this guy going a little bit more." And he basically said Reid kind of like shook his head and it's like, we got bigger guys out there, okay? Like we're gonna get Rashard a few snaps and maybe nothing more than that gadget role. So, but yeah, man, that was exactly the problem today. Like Pacheco, yeah, he might be the lead back until they get down onto the goal line, and he's not dominating targets, so really is tough to trust him at all as anything more than a low end RB3. But yeah, again, shout out to Tyquan Thornton, man. He's been hauling in those deep passes. And even today, you mentioned Mahomes going right back to him after that drop. Well, would have been a kind of a tough catch, I guess, but went right back to him, made an even tougher catch out there. And man, he even had that one player from Mahomes that put a little bit more loft on it, could have had a 60-yard touchdown to his credit. So Thornton really reinventing himself from the Patriots, maybe proven to be the best drafted Patriots wideout over the last decade. What a ridiculous list that is. So not a good game from Kelsey again. I mean, even Mahomes, man, didn't have a good game out there. He had two freaking thrown backward passes into the dirt that the Chiefs were lucky not to lose. Now, on one of those, Mahomes himself went ahead and grabbed it. So I guess good job there. But, would be a lot cooler if Mahomes was looking a bit more like Mahomes. They're going to need him to do that, man, next week. Chiefs versus the Ravens, man. Thinking the Ravens might blow them the hell out, Dwain. We'll see what happens, man. Last time I said that, the Eagles came back and beat the Rams, so we will see what happens there. Meanwhile, for the Giants, Russell Wilson came crashing back to earth, 2 interceptions, 160 yards on 32 pass attempts. They brought in Jackson Dart for, just some kind of different look, read option plays, and the crowd certainly voiced their displeasure every time he came off the field. So we'll see what happens, how much longer that leash is. It does seem like they're about to have one of their better chances of going to Jackson Dart. We did get the return of left tackle Andrew Thomas. That's a good start. Next week against the Chargers, that's not ideal. The next week against the Saints, that was the only game in the preseason that the Giants were favored to win. So even, going into NOLA, having to deal with Cooter Doodle yelling at you and stuff, maybe that's not the best spot either, but for the life of me, I can't think of much of a better one. So it would be cool to see Dart sooner rather than later, but we are seeing a lot of one rookie, Dwain, and that is Cam Scatterboo. Could be more than ever the feature back with Tyrone Tracy, unfortunately suffering that shoulder injury.
Yeah, 27% target share for Scatterboo today, scored 24.1 fantasy points. This is another guy that's going to be on a lot of waiver wires. We get it, not in your league, pal, but in the leagues that are if you're not in a not in my league, pal, he's out there. He's out there quite a bit. So another guy that with Tyrone Tracy hurt, like he's shown that he can get the carries inside the 5. He's shown that he can get the targets underneath. And really, that's all we can ask for. If you can do those two things, you have a real chance to be a fantasy asset. So not saying he's going to score 24 points per game, but like 15 to 18, somewhere in there, Ian. He could easily do that, over the next stretch of games if we don't have Tyrone Tracy. So Scatterboo should be a high priority pickup behind Trey Benson.
Yeah, I think we would have to lean Benson just a little bit because we trust the Cardinals more. But Scatterboo, again, right behind him. Those two, man, those could be the two best running backs we see.
Well, and we know James Conner's done for the season. We'll see I don't know the length of Tyrone Tracy's injury, but yeah.
And it was weird because I think we heard from Mike Garofalo or something that Scatterboo was going to have the bigger workload, which would have made sense. He already did in week 2, but there actually was quite a bit of Tyrone Tracy going on before he got injured. Scatterboo probably going to take it over anyway. Nice performance from him. He is so fun to watch, man. Like he runs very, very hard, forks up. Shout out to Kendall Valenzuela. Malik Neighbors, 2 catches, 13 yards. How can you go 3 quarters without getting this dude a reception, Dwain? Just call a couple pop passes to screens. It's not like it's Marvin Harrison Jr., where I understand, like, all right, you're not dealing with a yak demon here. I just don't understand that at all. But, Cowboys gave up more than enough catches to the guy. We're not worried about Malik Neighbors.
No.
Wan'Dale Robinson come crashing back down to earth a little bit. You got anything else to say?
No. I mean, Neighbors, he had a 23% target share, just didn't go his way. It didn't get much, like you said, until later in the game. But these things happen, guys. Like guys will, Neighbors is going to be a guy that's always going to be a wide receiver 1 in our ranks, and he's going to have weeks where he's the wide receiver 1 overall, and occasionally you just get a dud. It happens to the best players, so I wouldn't worry about it.
Again, would have been cool to see a little bit more of an effort to get him the ball, but sometimes that
Yeah.
just is the way the cookie crumbles. So, yeah, we'll see what happens. Giants get a little bit better, maybe. That'd be fun. That's going to wrap up this edition of the Fantasy Life Show. Dwain Utilization Tools live Monday morning, usually before too long. And you've been getting your utilization report out usually late Monday afternoon. So we thank you for that. Make sure you guys all check that out. I'll be getting to my way too early week 4 ranks sometime Monday afternoon as well. And otherwise, we'll keep on grinding that phone, crunching those numbers, and trying to help get us all one step closer to those fantasy championships. So for Dwain, for producer Mick, I'm Ian. Thanks again for tuning into the Fantasy Life Show. And until next time, take care, everybody.